individuals. The rest is academic.
Agreed.
That's a word on a Sunday, honey. That is a word. Thank you so much for that super chat. Next, we will have we'll do Jessica X and then the Roger report. Jessica, what are your final thoughts?
Okay, so to carry on with like what Ms. J was saying, there is this weird focus on the high value man, and when we look at the single percentage of those men, we're probably talking about 5% of the population, which is why I feel like it's a good thing that Kevin is doing what he's doing, because he's simply telling women that this isn't realistic, and you need to expand your options. And I think basically that mindset is reflective almost in what Miss J was talking about when she says that in order to be marriage material for men, you have to be economically viable. And while I can agree with that to a certain extent, this hyper focus on the economics of the man that you're marrying is doing women a disservice within the Black community. When you look at other communities, right, we can take the average yearly salary for a Black man is about $41,000. For a white man, it's about early $50,000s. I think there's a $10,000 difference a year. And for Asian men, it's, I believe, like 76. But if we're so focused on economics, right, in the Black community, why is it that when we look at other communities, such as Asian women, they're dating out at a 36% rate, marrying out at a 36% rate, when their men make...
Repeat that again with the super chat. He says, we have to model and teach a
% rate, when their men make $25,000 a year more than Asian men. So it's not that their focus isn't money per se. It isn't money, and their marriages are still more successful, and they're not focused on money. So it's not the money aspect that needs to change. Even when we're talking about, well, white men get married more because this, that, the other. There's only a $10,000 difference a year in how much a Black man makes versus how much a white man makes. That doesn't make the Black man less of a viable candidate for marriage. And so when we're looking at, what needs to change, it's not how much Black men are earning. That's not the problem. And other races of women can see that. It's not how much they're earning that's the problem. It's the mindset of people going into the marriage. So it's the mindset where women are looking for nothing but money. And that's what we're seeing on these shows. All they're thinking about is money, money, money. I need a high value man. I need a man that makes 6 figures. I need money, money, money. That's not how you build a successful marriage. That's a sure way to end up being single, in my opinion. So that's all I really have to say on the topic. Of course, you want a guy who is productive, but money should not be your main focus when you're seeking a partner. But thank you, ladies, for having me on. Great show as usual, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
Thank you for joining us, Jessica. We appreciate you. Always bring some very thought-provoking commentary and extremely logical, and your arguments are always very sound. So thank you for stopping by.
Hey, goodbye.
Bye.
Have a good one.
Brother Roger, always coming and
Take us
causing
out.
a freaking storm. What are your final thoughts?
Never a storm. I'm just trying to help the people out here. When it comes down to it.
Okay, so welcome to the GameChanger00100 show. I'm your host, GameChanger. Got a late start this morning, so I'm just waking up. So excuse me if I'm tired, but I wanted to cover this. I'm going to be brief on this one. At least I hope I am. It's Sunday, so I pretty much have the day to myself. But all right, so Black women want what white women want. Now, they're trying to follow their template, their game plan into getting the Barbie doll lifestyle. However, they're failing miserably because they're not really seeing what their template is. You see, they just see the end results. They see this white woman who goes to Pilates during the day, and she is with a high value man, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's what they see. And they see that from that's their perspective, because they either meet them at that point, or they either just notice them when they get to that point in their life. But fellas, and I said this before, you ever notice that low value white men are often married? And this isn't me calling people low value. This is me going off of their definition. Apparently, anybody below 6 figures is low value. But, we all live in areas where, and even if you do live like in a entirely Black area, you will notice that white guys come to do stuff, whether it's to install the cable, do something with the phone line, install the internet, they work for pest control. What's that? Terminex. They work for Terminex or something like that. They're putting a tent over the house. They're tarring roofs. If you would notice, a lot of these guys are married. These are younger guys, and they're married. Your mailman, for an example, also would be married. If you have something delivered by Amazon, he probably is married too, if he were white. And that's because that's part of their game plan. See, that's part of their mating strategy, to marry younger and then encourage success into the person. Behind every first generation, high value man is a person who started off somewhere. And that person do appreciate the comfort of a wife as he goes to that next stage in life. She's the one that's with him. You see, this looking for a finished product plan simply isn't going to work, because right now you're dealing with a guy who has been preparing himself. He's not going to, work for the last 20 years of his life to accept someone who he would have had 20 years ago, had he not worked. As his value increases, so does his requirements. Kind of like it's easier to work at a company like Amazon when it first starts, when it first gets off the ground. It's easy to get a job there. In fact, something? I had this professor who didn't have any degree in computer science, not even a bachelor's. And the reason why was simple. Bachelor's degree didn't exist bachelor's degree, in computer science didn't exist. So this was an exceptionally old guy. So he kind of predated everything, but he got on, and he was tenured straight out of the Navy, where he was doing coding for like incoming transmissions, or coding and decoding for, basically he used information that he learned directly in the Navy and applied it to the budding computer science profession. And that's how he got on. Right now, it requires a PhD in a very difficult subject in order to teach it on a university level. So it's easier to get in on something at the ground floor. You can't buy high and then sell higher. Well, you can, but you got to be able to afford the buy-in. It would have been nice to have bought a Bitcoin when it was $1. That's when you should have bought it. Right now, it's probably like at 42,000 or something like that. So you can buy high, but you have to have the money first. And if you can't afford it, then you can't afford. I know you can buy fractionals, and trust me, I'm just using this as an analogy. This can apply to any stock. You want to get something. You want to get it on the IPO level, is what I'm trying to say. A company just opens up and it's 25 cents a share. That's when you buy it. You don't wait to, it's 125 cents a share and then say, okay, I want to buy this, because basically at that point, you aren't benefiting from the growth. You're just sustaining. You're just living off the dividends of the amount that you put in, if it's not growing as a result of your investment. You see, that's their strategy. Right now, they're just seeing the results. Now, I want people to know that we're freshly new. When I say we as Black people, we're freshly new out of this whole "I don't need a man" phase. Now, what I mean to say about that is, I think it was like the 90s or something. Because you heard it all throughout the 80s, women boasting that they don't need a man. You heard that all throughout the 80s, and somewhere in the 90s, maybe even the early 2000s, they just stopped and shut up on that. And that's because they started to realize that it wasn't a good look. But here we are. So really what's going on is we're dealing with a culture of people, a culture of women who just now realize that they need a man. And they haven't completely understand, or I shouldn't say they haven't completely understood it, but they forgot the process of it. First of all, they forgot why. And secondly, they forgot how. See, right now, they just come to the realization that they need a man for financial, not necessarily security, but for financial competing. Because keep in mind, fellas, hold on one moment. Keep in mind, fellas, that the realization that someone actually does need a man, or that these women do need a man, comes from not the actual necessity of a man, but the quality of life improvement that a man provides. See, that's what they feel that they really need. Before 80s, 90s, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, the communities were quite separate. And when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about Black and white communities. They were ethnically separated. Blacks lived in one area like Oakland or something like that, and the whites would live in other areas. So we didn't really we had some notion of how the other half lived, but we didn't really have it in our face like we do now. Right now, it's kind of like in our face. And it was at that point where the women started to say, okay, this is how Becky lives, or this is how Rebecca lives. She's married. She has the white picket fence. She has this, and this. So I got to change the way I'm doing things. I do see that there is a correlation between marriage and wealth. And I thought that I was doing well as a single person. But in order to get to this next level, I will have to get married. But rest assured, the purpose of me getting married is to get to this next level. So once they started to see that, they wanted in. They wanted in on what Rebecca had. But they didn't see what Rebecca did to get there. They didn't see how Rebecca went to college with the intention to find a long-term mate. They didn't see that, she played around freshman and sophomore year, but by junior year, she was serious and she started wanting to settle down with a guy. They didn't see the first 5 years where both of them worked and they both made, $45K, except that they lived off of his income and saved hers. And then after 5 years, that was about $250K that they had in the bank. They don't see that. They don't see how the wealth was generated that way. And with the house paid off, and the student loans paid off subsequently, she decided not to work. They didn't see that plan in action. They just see the house. They didn't see that she married the plumber. They just see the house. And they also see that as the only benefit of marriage. And that's one of the main reasons. Actually, that is the reason that these women are calling for high value men. They're calling the Kevin Samuels show for high value men. They're basically saying, listen, if you do not have the ready-made product, the wealth that I need already in hand, then I don't need marriage. You see, they went from saying, I don't need a man, to saying, I don't need a man unless he brings substantial wealth to the table. So really what you're doing, yeah, please, people, get the likes up. So really it's less of a marriage and more of a financial prize in a game that they play with their vaginas. That's what they find themselves in. And, you know, quite frankly, a lot of Black men don't want to play that game. So the whole I don't need a man thing is still there. It's still present in the back of these women's minds. That never really went away because they still don't actually need one, so they think. What they're saying is, I don't need a man, but I do want an additional $100,000 in my house. And that's no matter what their economic situation is. If she makes $20,000 a year, she still wants an additional $100,000 in the house. If she makes $50,000, she still wants an additional $100,000 in the house. If she makes $200,000, she still wants an additional $1,000 in the house. You see, they're looking at it as a second job where they are comfortable, secure, and happy with their original job. And they want to subsidize their original job with another one. Now, Miss J, I was on the Sister George and Concrete Rose's breakdown, A Woman's Perspective. And Miss J had something interesting to say. Let me see if I could bring up her where she was talking. Give me a second, y'all.
Is the fact that, like, you know, as we age, we tend to accumulate in regards to relationships or hookups or whatever, we tend to accumulate more damage. What makes you think that people?
Okay, so
not talking about understanding self. So in my book,
or did you all have outcomes to the show?
I think you'll hear it during our.
That's how every other culture works.
Okay, right quick. Hold on. Let me go back a little bit.
It's a good topic. My whole thing is that.
All right. I'm going to share the screen on this one. Bear with me, peoples.
Basically, marriage is between two people. If you have one side that's focused on marriage or trying to be married, you don't have that other side who's also focused on it, it's not going to be successful. Period.
Agreed. So basically, she's saying that both sides have to be equally focused on marriage. Now, right now, we have a situation where one side is focused on marriage because Black men do want to get married. And the other side is focused on securing the wealth that marriage could bring.
Men have certain things that they need to do to be marriage eligible, and women have certain things they need to do. Only teaching one side, just tell them, oh, you need to submit, work on your attitude. Yeah, that's part of it, but the other side needs to work on.
Okay, telling one side that they need to submit and work on their attitude. Okay, let's see where she's going with this. I stopped it too soon.
Their things too. That's how every other culture works.
The other side needs to work on some things too. What are those things?
So unless we go ahead and do that, it's not gonna work. And like Paco was saying, nowadays with marriage, it's not a necessity. I'm saying it's not a necessity.
Okay, right there. See, that's what I'm talking about. That's the whole still don't need a man thing. Still don't need a man. So you see, even though they don't tout it because they know how stupid it looks, they're still on that mindset. I still don't need a man. It's not a necessity, but I'll do it if I can add 100K to my income. That mindset, that mentality still makes you unmarriage worthy. You're forgetting the purpose of marriage. If you're on some, I don't need a man, but I can use an extra 100K, then you're not ready. Now, I want to point out also that she mentioned a woman has to do this. A woman has to work on her attitude and be submissive. These are very easy and simple things to do. And she's talking about a man must buy his first house to be marriage ready. Not really. As I mentioned later in this stream, immigrant populations, they don't have to do that. They don't wait till they buy their first home to get married. We're going to stay in separate apartments and waste money each month to get married. They don't do that because their women want to get married. They don't just they don't have to get paid $100,000 to get married. Because that's essentially what they're asking for. They're saying that if you want to marry me, no matter what I look like, no matter if I am overweight, unattractive, belligerent, unsubmissive, and full of other people's kids, if you want to marry me, it's going to cost. And the price is $100,000 annually. I would like all the disposable income of someone who makes $100,000 annually, at least. That is my going rate for the cost of you placing a ring on it, because that's what they see marriage as. They still don't need it. She just said, still don't need it, but I just want it, and I'm going to sell it to you at this price. And once again, fellas, the price is the disposable income of $100,000 man, of a $100,000 earner. So, once again, let me play that part again.
That's what he was meaning. But thank you so much, Dick Lit. Also, shout out to Snuggles668. He said, so what did I miss? Can I have a brief synopsis of you guys' theory, or did you all have outcomes to the show?
I think you'll hear it during our closing. Like we kind of like wrap it up in our closing. So keep listening, and listen to, of course, our guests on stage. They're kind of wrapping up their primary points that were made throughout the show. We also got one from that brother.
Oh, by the way, Melody, I appreciate the super sticker, love. Appreciate it a lot. Mike Ross, I appreciate the $5. Thanks a lot.
PDAT, he says women have equality under the law. Tell us where they do not, Paco. Society doesn't give structural assistance. Families do. Thank you for the super chat, Brother Pete. We're doing closing commentary, but you have a good point, and Paco is certainly welcome to respond to your question in the chat. Who was next, Danny?
Let's get Miss J up in here. Mr. J, what are your final thoughts and what did you think of the show?
I mean, it's a good topic. My whole thing is that basically marriage is between two people. If you have one side that's focused on marriage or trying to be married, you don't have that other side who's also focused on it, it's not going to be successful. Period. Men have certain things that they need to do to be married.
Now, from her point of view, only the women are focused on marriage. And that's because from her perspective, men aren't focused enough on marriage. Men aren't focused enough on it to be able and willing to pay the residual income or the disposable income of a six-figure man just to have a basic wife. That's when she's saying, because when she's implying that men aren't focused on marriage, what she's saying is also is that the man should be focused on the marriage, not the bride. Like, a man would have to be so focused on marriage, they have to value it so high that they say, you know something, I spent a lot, or I spend a lot, I risk a lot just to get a woman who's average at best. If you don't take the deal that's presented to you, where the only benefit from that deal is for you to say that you're married, then you are not focused on it enough, is what she's getting at.
Eligible and women have certain things they need to do. Only teaching one side, just tell them, oh, you need to submit, work on your attitude. Yeah, that's part of it, but the other side needs to work on their things too.
What are those things?
That's how every other culture works.
These things can be worked on during marriage. Getting the house, the car, the white picket fence, or whatever your economic goals are, these are things that can be worked on during marriage. Your fucked up attitude is something that needs to be taken care of before you get that ring.
So unless we go ahead and do that, it's not gonna work. And like Paco was saying, nowadays with marriage, it's not a necessity. I'm saying it's not a necessity. It's actually something that you have to want to do. You can walk away from it if it does not work out for you, and basically do it with no penalties anymore. Because nowadays women aren't getting, they're not getting alimony and stuff like that.
Yes, they are. Don't get it twisted. Ask Dr. Dre's wife. Like, I don't know where that came from to say that nowadays women aren't getting alimony, but it is telling. It is telling that she said it like that, because notice how she didn't say men aren't paying alimony like that anymore. See, it's subtle. It's subtle, but it really says something about the person who makes such comments, because they only see things from a woman's point of view. They only appreciate something from a woman's point of view. So two people are married and then they get divorced. And two things happen. One, the men didn't pay the alimony, or he's not required to pay alimony. And two, the woman didn't receive alimony. Those are the two things. But she only sees it from the woman's point of view. They look at alimony as this thing that comes from an invisible source, an invisible, uncaring source of a thing that doesn't really care or matter. They look at it as a prize. They look at it as a lottery, but on a smaller scale for some. Oh, she didn't win the lottery. She bought the ticket by marrying the guy, and then she scratched it by divorcing the guy, She just didn't win. So she's saying that there's no penalty, but she mentioned for the women that there's no reward. Just saying.
So, I mean, you're going into it, you have to want to be married.
And when she says you have to want to be married, believe me, she's talking about the men. She's talking about the men. She, from her point of view, it's the men that don't want to get married. I appreciate you, MLT. Says, what's up? I appreciate you, brother. Thanks a lot. And that's how they're viewing it. Women are setting the price for a marriage. Once again, the price for, oh, and keep in mind that Miss J is, she is not younger, hotter, sexier, childless. But yet the price of it is the same of a woman who is younger, hotter, sexier, childless. Why? Because they don't need it. This is just a bonus. Just like winning the lottery is a bonus. It's not expected or required. It is a bonus. And that bonus is the disposable income of a six-figure dollar man. That is the price. That is the price for her. And the fact that nobody is paying that price for her, and they might be paying it for somebody who's younger, hotter, sexier, childless, because they are paying that price for that group of people and not her, from her point of view, men don't want it enough. Now, keep in mind, they're not saying that men don't want the women enough. They don't want me enough. They don't want this particular culture of women enough to pay that price. She's saying that they don't want marriage enough because really, once again, that's all they are offering. What they offer in marriage is to the man the right to say that he is married. Nothing more.
So nowadays, I mean, you have to be marriage eligible. And until we focus on that and just realize that not all the conversations we're having it's not gonna work. Okay, yeah, we have one side that has bad attitudes, we have one other side that has the other things wrong. But until both sides fix it, it's not gonna work.
The other things wrong with them? What exactly is wrong with the men? Now, you clearly express the bad attitudes, which is something that can be taken care of quite easily. But what's wrong with the other side? And whatever is wrong, it takes a lot more work to do than working on your attitude.
And we have to do it by making sure we focus on education for both men and women. Because right now, for decades, we've only focused on one side being educated, and the other side can just, wherever it happens, happens. And that's both sides' fault. We need to focus on that. Also focus on getting our economics together so where we can support the family, whether it's two people working or...
Okay. It's not about family support. Once again, it is not about family support. For a third time, it is not about family support. You don't need $100,000 plus however much she makes to support a family. That is bunk. That is BS. Okay. A man that is supporting himself in a one-bedroom apartment somewhere can add, can support another, especially if she's working. If she was to come and live with him in that one-bedroom apartment. People don't starve because, they're they don't have a bachelor's degree in some stupid subject. What she's saying is false. It's not a matter of support. It's a matter of luxuries. They're looking for luxuries. And in exchange for the luxurious life, what they offer is, I don't have an attitude. What they're offering in exchange for a life of luxury is the absence of a negative, is the absence of an attitude, and pseudo submission. Because if it has to be taught, then it's pseudo submission, sweetie. That's what they're offering.
Or just one person working, other person staying home with the kids. We have to go ahead and do that. All the other things we're talking about is just talk. It's not going to end up anywhere. That's what marriage is about. So that's, at the end of the day, that's what it is. Until we choose it, it's not going to work. Telling a woman to go ahead and try to be married by age 25, but therefore not telling the other side to be ready to be a husband.
Once again, she's not really defining ready to be a husband here, but basically saying capable of supporting a family. Now, again, a family doesn't just come the day that you get married. It doesn't. You don't just get married and then all of a sudden 6 kids pop out. But no, if you are a man who's able to at least reasonably self-sustain. Okay, listen. I looked it up, right? So you can get an apartment in Fresno, California. I've been there. Beautiful city, but not the best in California. You could get an apartment in Fresno, California, a 2-bedroom apartment for $1,034. Now, if the average income of a black man, is what, like 44,000? And let's just make it 35 because of taxes. Then basically, after he pays his rent, he still has $23,000 a year. Which means that after rent, he still has an additional $2,000 a month. Once again, after rent, he has an additional $2,000 a month in his 2-bedroom apartment in Fresno. Now, she would say that he's not ready for marriage. Why should I work on my attitude when he's not ready? He can support himself with a disposable income of $2,000 a month. He could buy himself a nice car. He can take you out on the weekends. He can save a little to get a house. Maybe even take care of a kid or two. Especially since he gets to write them off. He most certainly can feed himself. You see, that is where the rub comes in. That is the part that they don't say. They say he's not qualified. He's not qualified at this point. When really what they want to say is he doesn't meet my economic definition of qualified. And my economic definition of qualified is higher than everybody's. I offer the least and demand the most. And what do I mean by my economic qualifications are higher than everybody's? A fob. What is a fob? And no disrespect to the Oriental homies or to the Asian homies of any type. No disrespect. I heard this term from y'all. I didn't even know it existed. A fob is somebody, a woman or a man, who is fresh off the boat. Do you think her economic requirement of a man is higher than 45K? You think that? Even though she's younger, hotter, sexier, childless, you think her economic requirement is higher than the rank and file Keisha? A suburban Becky who marries the mailman at 22, who's studying to be a firefighter at the local junior college. She takes his 45K. And even though she comes from a suburban family, they work together in the one-bedroom apartment in Fresno. He becomes a firefighter, gets promoted a couple times. Now he's six figures. You think that the price for her is higher or lower? A trailer park, Tracy. Same thing. She marries the guy that works at Les Schwab Tires. And he too eventually moves through the ranks. You see, they don't want to come until after the fact. Exactly, primetime VA. The suburban chicks see the big picture. Not only do the suburban chicks see the big picture, primetime VA, they see the camera. They see the lighting. They see the makeup. They see the filters. They see the settings. They even see the frame that the picture comes in. You see, they see everything that it takes to make the picture. These women are just seeing the results. That's why they seen it years ago, right? Years ago, they said, and I'm going to keep bringing this up because I want y'all fellas to understand what we're dealing with. If you think that we're past the phase of, I don't need a man, you're delusional. These women are still saying, they're whispering, I don't need a man. And then saying, I want a high value man. See, they still don't need one. They just want one. And they just want the results of him being a high value man. They don't want the man, they want the wealth that the man provides to them. And they call it hypergamy. Can we find the white woman, female movement where they are talking about get the bag? Where they have shows with hundreds of thousands of subscribers talking about we want to get the bag. We are leveling up. Well, you never really leveled down, did you? You only married if you felt that it was extraordinarily in your benefit to do so, your financial benefit to do so. That's the only way marriage seemed valuable to you. Oh, Melody, I can't because I'm not at the thing. Let me go to the thing. So right now, We know that these women want to get married now, which is different than previous generations. We know that. Hold on. Previous generations, they said, I don't need a man. Now they're saying, I do, but I need it for. See, we have to ask why. We have to ask, why do you all of a sudden you need a man? Because if you ask a man what he needs a woman for, he will say, I need her for family. I need her to be a mother to my children, and I need her to be a support system to me. Period. I require, well, there's some other things. I require companionship, sexual gratification, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They have a list of reasons that they need it. And that list endears her to him. They don't have such a list. These women, like the one speaking here, they don't have that list. When they talk about hypergamy and leveling up, I need a man because I need a new bag. I need a man because I need that new Birkin bag. Because I'm tired of paying rent. See, it's not a dynamic reason. They're just playing a game called Double. What's Double? Stay tuned. I'm going to play a game. I'm going to create a quick game called Double. I'm going to show y'all exactly how it's played. The game that they're playing with their vaginas. Now, because these level up chicks' desire isn't aligned with yours, those relationships are destined to end. These women are not thinking long term. If they would, they wouldn't be lying about kids. Well, you think you're going to marry a guy that you're hiding entire children from? I think between the first time he meets you and he marries you, he's going to, or he should find out that you have kids, unless their kids live with their father in Mississippi or some crap like that. But even still, he'll see the stretch marks. And he'll feel the other parts of your anatomy that's been stretched. But you're not thinking long term. You're thinking about how can here, I'm gonna mute you for a second. But you're not thinking long term. You're thinking about how can I secure short-term benefits from high earning men. And each and every single time you do this, you damage the reputation of Black women. But once again, you're only thinking individually in short term. You're not thinking that every time you burn these guys, this is a guy that's less willing to date a woman like you. And there are hundreds of thousands of them trying to do that. Y'all have the shittiest reputation of all women that has ever been, that has ever existed, ever. I can't think of a shit. I'll tell you the best reputation of women in history. Vietnamese women. Vietnamese women fucked American soldiers. And in their gratification stage, they started talking to each other, saying stuff like, we're going to bomb them at noon tomorrow. And they thinking these prostitutes don't know nothing. So they take that information back to their men and prepare them. Won the war against the most powerful military force that has ever existed up until that time. Because of the support of the best women that I know of that has ever existed in history. And who's the worst? You. But I've been talking too long. Ike, what's up, brother? What's on your mind?
I've gone ahead to unmute myself. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. So, not going to stay too long. Just want to state something. I want to lay down the landscape using a particular framework, which perhaps is easy to understand. Now, inferences can be drawn from the way I lay out the landscape, but I'm not going to necessarily be saying what needs to be done about it. And this has to do with civilized Western societies. Now, statistically, you can say that there's a particular group that has drunk the Kool-Aid more. In this case, you're talking about Black women, right? But
Right.
generally, anyone within this landscape is susceptible to these dangers, right? So basically, I'm just going to use a simple Maslow's hierarchy of needs type of rubric.
Okay.
So basically, the lower needs, you need to breathe, you need to drink water, you need to eat, right? Let's just call that provision. And then above that, you need a safe little hut. You don't feel like someone's going to hit you over the head when you walk out of your cave or something like that. So that's protection, right? You need safety. Okay. Those two basic needs have been met for every woman in a Western civilized society. They don't need to have a personal relationship with a man in order to get that. In other words, men are still doing it. Okay, men are the firefighters, men are the police officers, men are the trash collectors logging the trees and so on and so forth. But you don't need to marry that guy, right? You could just stay where you are and the organs of civilization will funnel the benefits to you, right?
Right.
Now, on the highest levels of Maslow's hierarchy of needs are things that have to do with loyalty and having in other words, it's band of brothers kind of thinking. If we're out there hunting, we're out there being soldiers, for example, and we see the bigger picture, we're going to be together. For example, somebody was talking about Becky seeing the bigger picture. Yes, generally speaking, because it was imparted upon her by her father, and she has at least taken it, she kind of sees it a little bit. But my point is this: you cannot expect women, generally speaking, statistically, okay, in aggregate, to rise up with you now after their basic lower needs are met, to now rise up with you to start seeing things on the band of brothers level. Like, oh yeah, I'm going to see the bigger picture. I'm going to be loyal. I'm going to hold arms and arms with you. Again, I'm speaking statistically, okay, that this is a man's natural mode. This will help a lot of men, I think, to understand, like, oh, well, their basic needs have been met. Therefore, they're just going to revert to basic nature. Either it's going to be they're looking for a feeling from you now, right? Which is the one immediately above safety. And that feeling, as we know, is ephemeral. It'll change. It'll fluctuate. They're looking for things like love, which is bullshit. Or, the Disney stuff, it's all bullshit, right? It'll come, it'll go. Then what is needed now is, okay, men are saying, why don't you rise up to the very tippy top and be a band of brothers type person with me? Be out there in the field hunting. Have a stoic, in other words, outlook on life. They're basically wanting women to become stoics. And women have never been stoics, okay? No society has ever expected that from their women. I'm not saying who's right or who's wrong here. I'm just saying this is the lay of the land. Therefore, what inferences can we draw? What possible solutions can we organize based on the fact that, again, the two lower rungs, protection and provision, have been met? To expect a woman who has not evolved this to kind of go up to the highest levels, to go there with you, just jump there with you because it's, because that's what we have to do now, is a little bit foolhardy, right? So I'm saying that the problem is a little harder than we might think. And I don't know what anybody else, if they have any thoughts on that, but that's basically what I'm putting down.
Actually, I have a lot of thoughts on that. First, let me read Marco's. Super chat. I appreciate you. Thanks a lot. It says they're all just hoes. Use the hoes as amusement park or a nursery. Real men don't think about what the hoes are thinking. Just uses them as needed. Okay. I appreciate you, Marco. All right. So, let's talk about this because I did want to bring this up, and it's exactly what you're stating, but they're actually it's a little bit worse because you say that they're on the that they start off with the first two, safety and physiological needs taken care of. it's worse than that because they're actually start off in the green. This is where most B-dubs stop. If you notice that many of them deal with self-esteem, confidence, achievement, respect of others, respect by others. That is where we see the problem in the general behavior. But I want to discuss why. And we're going to go through the first three. So breathing, of course, food, water, sex comes very cheap to every woman. Sleep, homeostasis, and excretion, meaning that they need a place to shit. So that's all pretty much taken care of. We can move past that. Even if she doesn't work, she gets welfare, and even the homeless eat. So, they're and of course they have a place to shit. All right. Anyway, security of the body is pretty much taken care of employment. That's not necessarily a necessity for them. Of resources, well, depends on what level of resources, but the basic ones are covered in the first one. Morality of the family. Now, they can essentially have families, how they define families, without a man, through our welfare system. So even that is taken care of. Health, Obamacare, property, Section 8. So, and friendship, they have their girlfriends, they have their families that they made themselves with sperm that they pick up off the street. And sexual intimacy, once again, sex is free. So yeah, they're kind of like stuck in this area.
Hey, GC.
Yeah, and I'm sorry.
No, go for it.
Since I brought it up, I just wanted to perhaps reiterate for anyone who may have missed. I know you, GC, you get everything, but basically those lower two rungs were the reasons why the marriage was necessary. Like, it was absolutely necessary from their point of view. Protection and provision. They even it still is kind of said that way even up till now, right?
Right.
So if those things are not there anymore, whether they're thinking about this rationally or not, okay, they're gonna either just revert to, okay, I want Pookie dick, or I want these kind of ephemeral things, which perhaps are in the green area, but those things don't last. It's like, okay, I want you to make me feel good about myself, that self-esteem stuff. And then how long is that going to last? That's going to just break away. So and then what people want, what men are looking for is, how about you rise up to the top and become some kind of philosopher king with me, looking at the big picture, being stoic. And I think that that's going to be a tough one to do.
Right. Yeah. Well, I wanted to point out, and I agree that we're asking for men to, we're asking for women to behave as if they're self-actualized.
Yes.
But I do want to say that a lot of men are stuck here because of sex. Sex is one of the things that is required. Now, it does say in the hierarchy of needs that you must master each of these things. Not really that you must have an abundance of each of these things. Of course, if you have an abundance of it, then you have mastered it, but that's not the only way. Self-control of your sexual desires is one way to master it. Another way is to simply pay for it. But if they can, they will keep you here until you become a six-figure man that's willing to spend his disposable income on her. That's how they see the situation. That's why they get so jealous when you attempt to receive completion in this area from any other means. Now, of course, the second one a man actually can achieve easier than the first one. Now, that wasn't true of society before or when this originally was made, but it is true now. A man can secure his body, employment, et cetera, before he can secure a sexual resource. Sad but true. And, of course, he can the family and things like that. So this is what they're doing. They're suppressing you down on the hierarchy of needs. Now, what they don't understand, and what other cultures of women do understand, is that higher earning men are self-actualized. that is their journey along it, because the things in the lower tiers of it really requires minimum. It requires minimum of everything. Like, these are very base things: food, water. It doesn't require any extravagance in those areas.
Yeah. Hey, GC, how's it going? How's it going, Melody? A little Big Nate. Ike, how's it going, brother?
Hi.
Salute.
That was kind of what I wanted to touch on right there, was the self-actualization part. Right. Because that's sort of like the what do you call it? The wild card, or the I don't know what you do, but see, so for example, once, as a man anyway, once you're there, you basically have all of the freedom in the world to throw the middle finger to everything below it. Right. Women included, because you're self-actualized. It's pretty much, you kind of get out here and pick and choose, indifferent to cultural imperatives, right? And ultimately, that's what the fear is. What's interesting in looking at this here, if you read the BLM at School 13 Principles propaganda that they shoved down the throats of the LA Unified School District students this past week, what you'll find is that entire cultural platform that they're programming not only just all other kids to recognize, but Black kids to accept, basically ixnays heterosexual fathers out of the equation. So our only recourse as Black men is to become self-actualized. Thoughts?
Well, the way this works, Complex, is in order to become self-actualized, you have to master everything beneath it. And by master, it means have control of everything beneath it.
Okay.
So it's very difficult for men for heterosexual men to control anything, because even to get to the point of self-actualization,
you control what you create, GC.
No, you don't, because people.
No, you do. You control what you create.
Complex. Tell that to the man who created kids and divorced and don't see them, but has to pay for them. We don't.
Well, that's co-creation. I'm talking about you. Self. The word in self-actualization is self. It's what you create. Now you co-create kids with another person.
So tell that to the man who creates a business but lose half that business in a divorce. So
that's co. That's not self.
Huh?
That was if it was subjected to another person, that's not self. When you do things for yourself, you're literally doing it singularly for you.
Okay, well, put it like this. People lose things that they create in divorce.
They do.
So you can lose something that you create. And I'm bringing that up, not just to go against you or anything, but I'm bringing that up to say that with these things unsecure, and with, say, this middle one, right? Friendship, family, sexual intimacy. Say you are on your journey to self-actualization and you get there, but you have somebody who takes this part away from you. Then you're back the middle, love, belonging, etc. through divorce.
Well, isn't right, but life's a journey, right? And that's the whole thing, is that you may go through these trials and tribulations in your quest to self-actualization. So that may be actually a part of the learning process to get to the point of self-actualization.
So it's longing, it's extending our journey as Black men. It's a huge obstacle in our journey. It's kind of like running track against somebody else who is also running track, except that your track has a forest of cut down trees in it, and theirs is just a basic track. Okay, we deal with these issues far more than any other group, and therefore getting to self-actualization is a lot more difficult for us than any other group. Now, the reason why I mentioned before, and then I'll get Ike's take on it, because I know you're more familiar with the hierarchy of needs than I am. But this is not. There's several different charts. One of them defines self-actualization as a need for legacy, a need for intellectual fulfillment, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This one seems a lot more liberal when they say stuff like lack of prejudice. So let's go off the
Can I chime in real quick?
Who's that? Little Big Nate?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me just finish what I'm saying here, sure, and then go for it. But so what I'm saying is, at that point, when you're thinking about legacy and when you're thinking about expanding your mind, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that is when the actual income comes in. That's when people really start focusing on income, because you're thinking about things like legacy. Before that, you're working just enough to sustain the things at beneath self-actualization. Go for it.
Yeah, appreciate you letting me on the panel, GC. Gentlemen, lady. I don't know how Black men are supposed to realize any level of self-actualization when we routinely put our very destiny in the hands of others. We don't even believe we have control over whether our life ends up good or bad. All of how everything ends up in our life are in the hands of other people. That's how most of us operate. That's how most of us vote. Okay, we put complete control in the hands of everybody else. We fill the streets by the millions, telling the world that everything that we'll ever hope to have has to be given to us, has to be portioned out to us. I don't understand how we as a race of men could ever reach self-actualization doing that. And also following a ruined woman into hell, voting the way she does, thinking the way that she does. Somebody's going to have to help me with this. Thank you.
Well, I mean, communities work as, it is a situation of codependence. What you're describing is an instance where one expects to receive from a community and not contribute to it. Now, once again, that would fall under self-actualization, is when people have desires to contribute to such communities. Speaking of contributions, I want to give a shout out to Ike for the large Cash App. I appreciate you, brother. And I want to give another shout out to Sam. Shout yourself out in the chat room. I won't say your name. I appreciate you for the Cash App. Appreciate both of you, brothers. Last but not least, let me get this super chat. Oh no, I already read that one, but somebody else sent one. I hope it's not gone. Hold on. Here we go. Kenneth Williams. Give me a second. I hate it. I overscrolled. Give me a second. All right. Kenneth Williams says, for the content, 100. I appreciate you, brother. So yeah, that's all I'm saying, is that our path to self-actualizations is due largely to the culture that we have. So Ike, let me get your input on that, because once again, you're more versed on the hierarchy of needs than I am.
Okay, so you mentioned that there will be some people for whom you made that slip, and I made it too. That's kind of funny. Yeah. Self-actualization will be about the contribution to the community and so on and so forth. Obviously, we know that there are hierarchies upon hierarchies upon hierarchy. Sure. Right? Now, first, let me go ahead and mention, kind of maybe what may be obvious is, like, I'm over here talking about certain civilizational or cultural milieu, the landscape, the soup within which people come up. And I have to just say that, yes, I know I'm coming from somewhere else, okay? I'm Nigerian, blah, blah, blah. So take all I'm saying with that, with a grain of salt. Now, Stoicism, I think, answers the question, or the questions that arise from the back and forth between you and complex. In other words, Stoicism accepts that the lion could, or the antelope could kill me when I'm out there hunting it. Things could completely collapse, right? Like, the writings of Marcus Aurelius makes it very clear, or any kind of a Stoic. Every culture of men, right, that do man shit have a Stoic philosophy, whether they write it down or not, right? So, but that Stoic philosophy does accept that shit will go wrong on you. Reality will go left on you, including women will go left on you, right?
I could tell you all about it, Ike.
Hold on.
So that I think that we can talk about, because there is most of Stoicism is about kind of fleshing out that thing. Like, okay, well, you can even look at that prayer. I know it just comes to mind. The things that are with him. I don't memorize. I don't know what it is, but accepting that I can control. Blah blah blah. You know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of prayer is kind of like setting up that landscape there. And then many arguments can be made to kind of fill in the map as to, well, what do you accept, or how much can you control, and what is the mindset you need to have in order to accept that. Now, back to the whole hierarchy thing, there will be some, okay, who easily master their desires, okay? Now, take me, for example. I have a whole playlist on my channel, 10 videos so far on mastery of subjective consciousness, which is just all about that. It's about you mastering yourself. You master your feelings in their body. You master image in your head. You master talk in your head. You master, in other words, the user interface with which you experience reality, minute by minute, second by second. Now, not everybody's going to go there or even wants to go there, okay? Therefore, there will be some of us who just fly over this hierarchy and in this particular regard, right? But it's not required for all. Some just need to recognize that, okay, self-actualization will be, okay, I need to contribute. I need to follow. Now, then there is the question of critical mass, okay? When it comes to, well, how then could it be fixed? There needs to be a critical mass of those on top leveraging or at least demonstrating a certain kind of success such that the rest will follow. Now, I'm talking about men, okay? I'm talking all about men, because I don't really think you're going to bring women up to a certain level, right? You call it misogynistic, whatever you want, but I think that'll be disingenuous of anyone, and I don't even know why I'm addressing it, but we know the rubric within which we're talking about here. So if men reach a critical mass, okay, the ones who can fly over it and the ones who can come along and so on and so forth, there will be enough, because you cannot always bring everybody. There will be enough to follow a certain kind of program. And I started off my whole talk by saying, I'm not here to per se give prescriptions, because I know what I'm good at, right? I'm more of an intrinsically motivated, selfish bastard, capitalist type. I'm not a politician. I'm not like the guy that is very good at mapping out what we're going to do next and on and on and on. But I can at least see some things, right? And I know to stay within my lane and say that we cannot, that men need to be more stoic to the degree to which we can. And therefore we need to keep away. We cannot give, okay? Don't cast your pearls among swine, as the as the Bible would say, right? So I know I put a few things on the table, but just to kind of reiterate, but bullet point wise, that I'm saying that Stoicism won't answer the question of things going wrong, even though you've reached self-actualization. Okay.
I want to. Can I say
go ahead.
Yeah. If it's real quick, please.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so no, you do mention that society can only function when a high concentration of Stoics or self-actualized men exists. Stoicism is different. I can't see one having a person having one without the other. And that's, I mean, you can have pseudo-stoicism where a person appears to be the strong silent type, but he's doing that in order to maintain or to achieve a goal that is lower on the hierarchy of needs. You know, he's doing that because some women may think it's sexy, but true stoicism, you're right. And in addition to that, like when you look at, well, okay, if you look at modern figures, like someone like Ice Cube, who, you know, is quoted for saying life ain't nothing but bitches and money, which means that at that point in his life, he probably was on the first or third level, you know, and as he progressed, he turned into a different person as he climbed up, you know, this pyramid. He turned into a different person, and now he's doing political talks about how to solve problems, you know, between Black people, and that's because he moved past the, you know, he conquered his physiological needs, and he just continued to move up, family, you know, esteem, achievement, you know, respect for others, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He continued to move up, and now we have, you know, what we see in his behavior now. So that's a modern example of what you described, a a past example would be, Machiavelli's The Prince. Cesare would be an example. Also, I guess Julius Caesar himself would be an excellent example. You see, from what we know, these people are hyper accelerated into self-actualization. And that's why Machiavelli writes that a true prince must be, virtuous and fortuitous. He must have some nobility in him. So I think he was tapping into something when he said that, because basically he's saying he must have a head start on the hierarchy.
How are these self-actualized Black men treated when they get to positions of power where they can speak to our problems honestly? If they attempt to speak to our problems honestly, how are they treated?
Well, little Big Nate, to answer that question, I mean, what good are you? Because at that stage of the game, you command control, right?
Control of what? We see what happened.
No, I'm saying when you say self-actualized men do not acquiesce. You run shit. See, so there's an inherent problem with heterosexual Black men who run shit. It runs juxtaposed to the cultural imprint. So when you ask that question, that's the answer.
Want you to
I'm just answering your question.
No.
I'm just answering your question. That's all.
So what good is it to even attempt to bring this the self-actualized Black man's perspective to the masses of Black people when all he's going to face is vitriol and attacks and dismissals?
Awesome question.
Yeah. Okay. Good point. So when you are in that phase of your life, certain things matter more than the lower portions. Now, when you say what good, it depends on what you consider good. Take Julius Caesar as the example I gave before. Now, Julius Caesar had everything on this list. He really didn't need to push the envelope. Like, why would a consul of Rome, which was the superpower of Europe and Northern Africa and Southern Asia, why would a person that powerful risk his life several times just to receive more power? And that's where the self-actualization comes in. You see, if he valued say something as base as food, then he would just be some fat Roman guy that that goes around Rome in a litter all day. If he valued something as base as sex, he'd be Caligula, or he would be just a person with an orgy of boys and girls every day. He was born wealthy. Well, there's some pushback on that, but I mean, he reached this at a very young stage in his life. If all he wanted was sleep, then that's easy to come by. If all he wanted was security, he was very secure, not only in his personal body, he was fit and he could defend himself quite well. Employment wasn't an issue. See, he didn't stop at these things. There were things that was more important. He wanted to create a legacy of his own. That's what happens when you reach that stage. You move beyond all of the base stuff, and now you're thinking about conquering the world. Now, whether or not you achieve, exactly, little Shirley, little Caesar wanted it all. Whether or not you achieve this goal, is debatable, but he was willing to die for it. And keep in mind, if he dies, he loses all the luxuries of everything beneath it, but he don't care because it doesn't matter to a self-actualized man. And
you can't take things with you when you're gone. And two, if you think in terms of, you don't think in terms of limits, then essentially what it is that you'll basically just go until you die.
And that's what he did. What I'm saying What I'm saying, fellas, is that he could have stopped. He could have stopped at any point, and that's the difference.
Why would you? Why would you?
Well, there's a lot of people who would just stop at fucking different bitches every day. Excuse my language, Melody. But there's a lot of guys who would stop at that point, and
No, I'm speaking in terms of more along the lines of self-actualization. Why would you ever stop?
He
Well,
did.
those kinds of people don't stop.
Yeah, that's my point. That's why that's an example of the behavior. I'm really responding to Little Big Nate on that. Like, that's an example of a behavior that we need more of, but we don't have it because we're still stuck on the first and third level.
Well, my contention is we may have hundreds of thousands of men that are self-actualized, but they see what happens to those men when they attempt to broaden the scope of their influence and talk to people and be honest. You get trashed. So why even waste the time trying to corral these horrible people? And I'm sorry, most Black American people are fucking horrible. They're horrible people.
So Little Big
ruined people.
So you see, here's the thing: when you say they get trashed, if you look at the fourth one from the bottom where it says esteem, respect by others, a person who has mastered that really don't care if they get trashed.
Understood. And I don't believe Mr. Jackson cares. Ice Cube. I don't think he gives a shit. He would have never even stepped out like he did if he cared. He knew he was going to be trashed. He knew he was going to be attacked, trying to speak logic to a group of people who cannot stand to be spoken to logically. So my only contention is Black men are going to have to realize how infinitesimally small the group of people you will be able to bring along with you are. So Black people love destroying themselves. They love it.
So yeah, that would be once again, that would be another example of being caught, like not having mastered the fact that you aren't respected by your peers. So that would be another hang up on a man's quest to self-actualization. But once you have fulfilled that quest, and then things like fear of your personal safety and things like that kind of goes away to a certain extent. And that's why you reach, and that's how you reach that level. And if you look at like other cultures, like samurai cultures and things like that, when you have a high concentration of these men, to most men of that rank in society, they are given the things in the first 4 levels at a very young age. They're given women, they're given safety while training to become samurai. They're given love and belonging, family, et cetera, quite cheaply. And they're also respected members of the Japanese society of their time. So after being given all of these things, they move into a level of self-actualization to where the purpose, their legacy is more important than their personal safety and life.
Question.
Little Big Nate, I'm sorry, let me just add this. I think that Little Big Nate, my little contribution to answering your question is looking towards future generations.
Exactly.
Yeah.
My only thing is, what does it say about us as self-actualized Black men that we don't come to the aid of men who are coming under this bombardment of attacks just by speaking the truth? We have to come to their aid.
Little Big Nate, I'm not self-actualized. I think that there is a large number of us who aren't, but may believe that they are. I haven't secured a family of my own, so I know that in order for me to behave as Julius Caesar did, I would have to first do that. At least that's the way.
Okay, that was okay. Maybe I can relate sort of like 2 thoughts I'm having together here. Because one, you just mentioned that you said, okay, well, I'm not self-actualized because I haven't essentially laid a foundation and established a family of my own. Okay, so let's plant a flag there. The other point I wanted to bring up is that seemingly there's this fascination with Black culture to always refer back to a time far long ago, right? To try to bring some sort of correlation or relevance to modern constructs, which essentially, just as of maybe within the past year or so, has been reset. So once again, we're in a completely new paradigm that is being written as we speak. So, and the variables are different because now it's largely going to be digitally driven. And so when I look at oftentimes in the past, what I realize here is that systems and institutions of the past may exist in some form or iteration today, but they've largely adapted and accepted modernity. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so I can look to the past and I can say, okay, well, that was applicable for that time. But then as a guy who was married and had the home and all that and did the whole process and everything, I kind of have an idea of what all that's about. Right. So when I say, okay, well, look, at the end of the day, self-actualization means that you come to the realization that you were born alone and you will die alone. So what you create is what you can lay claim to. Now, there's the co-creation aspect. So you could say, I co-created that with that other person, the things that were subjected to other individuals. Yes. But then there's the things that you do on your own that will lay a mark for who the fuck it was that you were as a person during the time you were here. That is the ultimate definition of self-actualization. Which I would and that right there, at a certain point, becomes a selfish pursuit. At that stage of the game, you throw the middle finger to the black community, especially if it's not. Listen, if it was intrinsically encoded in you to do something far above and greater beyond the fucking people who can perceive it, the same goddamn people who would tear you down.
Easy on the swear.
Self-actualization is the realization that you're going to have to say fuck them.
Well, that's why ever since I started.
Let me just address that because I actually view it as the exact opposite of that. You see, from what I noticed, as a pattern of behavior from people who have obviously secured the things in the lower rungs, I'm talking about the super wealthy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Their focus seems to be more on contributing to things that change societies. These are the ones who go back to their old alma mater and buy benches and buildings. You know, they invest in hospitals.
Yeah. You can't do that when you're broke, though.
Well, then if you're broke, you're not really
I know. So there's a process, and this is what I mean. I mean, as the dude who's been married and
process, I'm just saying that once that process is complete, the last thing you are is selfish, and you actually have.
I'm saying in order to get to the point,
complex.
In order to get what I'm saying, in order to get to that point, you have to maintain a level of selfishness. GC.
But yeah,
you do.
Okay.
You have to be selfish in order for you to get to that point where you can then turn around and be a philanthropist. You have to be fucking selfish.
Okay, if I may, let me try. I see the two parallel tracks here that you guys are going on. Yes, we understand the process. We can intuit the kinds of internal kind of psychological mechanisms that we're going on within this kind of person. Yes, selfishness is part of it. And yes, GC, when we do see empirically people who have gotten there turn around and do certain things. But there is a third layer, which has to do with personality types. Okay. Now, there is a type of person, okay, that is selfish through and through. And I would say that is, I'll put myself right there. I'll put it on the wood, as they say, right? That's me, right? But however, though, it doesn't mean that I will not go ahead and look for the, let's say, call them the more politician type. And I don't mean the dirty, low life type. I mean the person who is more extrinsically motivated, right? They have goals that have to do, they play easily with other people. And they have goals that have to do with external outcomes. So someone like me, I can find somebody else that has to do that. So, we need to go out there and take over this particular institutions, use our money to leverage the organs of influence, be they churches, so on and so forth, to get certain outcomes, because we are looking at the future, next generations, to Little Big Nick's point.
You called me black.
Yeah, my bad. That's horrible.
Damn.
Have I ever said anything?
Woo!
You got game, Little Big Nate. You got game.
Oh, stop it.
Little Big Nate's got game.
Stop, please stop it.
So basically, to Little Big Nate's question, which I kind of made a pointer to, saying that the next generation. So this person might come to me and say, hey, we want these rites of passage. We want to be able to create hierarchies for these. Again, all these things about men, generally speaking. And then there's a way in which you handle the women, which is, in my opinion, a lot easier, right? Because it's not so complex. It's more basic, if you will. It's just about raw emotions and raw natural needs, right? So this person might come to me and say, I have a program for this, that, and the other. And I will perhaps have selfish reasons why I will want to participate, not in the level with, not doing the same kinds of things this other type is doing. So I'm talking about two people, okay? We claim to be self-actualized, right? We do have some money in the bank. One of us is completely intrinsically motivated, selfish bastard. That's me. And then there'll be another one who's like, I have certain external goals I would like to see, okay? I could go play in that other person's sandbox and contribute because there will be selfish, for certain selfish reasons, okay? And I think that that's how you can kind of bring these two things together, and then maybe in 2 or 3 generations, the community will begin to come along. Is it an easy task? No. By definition, So I just wanted to say all that.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, sir. I think the process could actually be substantially easier if more men took the advice from men like me. And from what I understand, Mr. Complex, I, after my divorce, fought for and got full custody of my 2 children. And I believe Mr. Design, through circumstances not having to do anything with him, is a single father also.
This is true.
Yeah. The only way there is even an amount of hope worth considering for Black people in America is more Black fathers take full custody over these children. It's not going to happen without that. It's just not. 6% of our children are born to unwed mothers. And unfortunately, these women, they put the evidence of their lack of concern, their lack of maternal instincts all over social media. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries. I don't think I really mind the interruption, nor do I. But it wasn't as relevant enough to what he was saying to warrant it. So if you have to do something like that, please make it like a little bit more relevant to what he was saying.
I'm not. Are you speaking to me?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I understand what you're saying.
So the connection to what he was talking about self-actualization and the difference.
Oh no, but he kept saying future generations. Our future generations will be as terrible as our current generation without new types of influences over how they end up being raised. I'm sorry.
Okay.
No hope. There is no hope for us as a people. 26% of Black women are married. 29
now
Americans are married to each other. Dude, it's not going to happen unless our people have someone else raising them. Someone else other than your average Black woman, someone else other than the state, which is ruining them also. Unfortunately,
we're drifting again. So let's let Ike finish what he was saying about future generations, please.
Oh, well, as I was saying, I don't spend a lot of time mapping out strategies for groups of people. That's generally not my thing. So I can speak on and teach on a very granular level, mastery of self, though, at the highest levels, if I may say so myself. And then again, I understand psychological types enough to know where my lane is. But what I was saying to bridge the point that Complex was dwelling on about the process, and it has to be a selfish person and so on and so forth, I wanted to add this layer of psychological types that it will be a hard thing, Little Big Nate. It will be hard, right? And you might not even succeed, okay? But there should be amongst the cohort of those whom can make the moves. There are going to be some of us who have that vision, and they are there. I mean, I know the types of people, right, who want to do certain things on a very high level and a grand scale, which will involve also, changing of certain laws, let's say, but generally speaking, having children raised in a certain way, and then having them have these rites of passage, especially for men, because it's very important. Every example GC has been given about the samurai and this and that and so on and so forth, about making sure that those lower needs are met so that people can easily be accelerated higher levels. I, for example, come from a royal family, putting cards on the table, right? So that it's not like, oh, well, in other words, to use the silly language of privilege, I know I'm coming from a place of privilege in certain regards, right? A certain cultural structure, and then a certain family kind of structure where I could not imagine anything but going to the highest levels.
And was just nothing to apologize for either.
Well, yeah, but you get what I'm saying, right?
I hear in your voice the need to apologize, though. I don't understand that.
Yeah. Okay, good. So since I've been completely welcomed in here and all that, okay, cool. Then I'll just say what I'm saying. Where you have to then recreate a situation whereby you don't have to apologize for people thinking, okay, well, I'm going to rise up to the very top in terms of my own personal internal state, which is reaching stoicism, okay, and understanding that I will be right, that there is a hierarchy. In other words, that there are people beneath me, right? That kind of a mindset. This egalitarian, hyper focus on freedom and equality, which again was more swallowed whole cloth by the Black community. But I think that generally the landscape of Western civilization has that in there, right?
I have a question.
It's all about
Right.
Sorry.
Okay, sorry.
So basically, just to finish up, there is nature, right? There's nature. Nature has no freedom. Nature has no equality. Nature has constraints. Nature is full of hierarchy and so on and so forth.
Absolutely.
Okay, and then you have a reasonable pushback on nature, right? Because you're like, hey, I'm going to use my brain. I'm going to use science, for example, to push back on nature to create some more space for human freedom and human agency. And I'm going to create a more peaceful society by telling people that they have rights, which are basically just what you feel. Oh, you feel like you want to be alive? Okay, I'll give you that. You feel like you want liberty and pursuit of happiness? I'll give you that. But then we see how it starts to run away from you. Now people feel like I have a right to be accepted for my fatness. Feel like, I have a right for you to pay for my healthcare. Feel like. So, and then there's a cohort of people who just completely swallow that whole cloth. Okay. But my whole thing is
are swallowing it whole cloth. The mat, which is so dangerous.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I would say that the fact that we're having this conversation means that, yes, there are some of us who do not have it. And the way to create a situation whereby you can accelerate people up, again, men, up and understand hierarchies and so on and so forth, is to institute these kinds of, you need to take over certain institutions. And again, when I say it, it sounds thin because I'm not that kind of person per se, but I know that I can play with that kind of a person because I know there's going to be some selfish benefits for me. Okay.
Now, I had a question for you. So let's think about this for a second here. I would say maybe we could break humanity up, right, into maybe 3 categories. The ones that you say would prefer more of an egalitarian sort of type of situation, would you say that they fall into like maybe the 85th percentile?
Those whom are more easily pushed, funneled into that. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And then there's going to be sort of like your kind of administrator.
Right quick. And complex. It's much lower than that. It's much lower than 85%. 15 out of 100 people, aren't wealthy enough to even be charitable.
No. I mean, I'm sorry. What I meant to say was that the people who more or less sort of opine for more of like a would you say? You said a kind of like a What was the words you said?
Well, I use words such as egalitarian. I use words such as, rights. I use words such as, just pushing against nature, just requiring more freedom and equality. Everything is everything, that kind of a thing. I think it is a psychological disposition because it doesn't matter what you have. Some people will just not like that. Some people are like that. No, ever since they were 6, they're like, no, there isn't racial hierarchy. I'm not equal with other people, and so on and so forth.
This is where I wanted to go with it. Right? Because see, the problem here is that we kind of approach these conversations as if we're all equal. Right? And so like for me, like when I hear self-actualization, that's sort of like my default. That's kind of been my whole life, right? In terms of like pursuits, what it is that I've chosen to do in life. It's always really kind of been self-initiated, my own thoughts on what I wanted to do, and then I went about doing it. And that, right, to me, is the very core of that. Right, because the whole thought of me even doing it originated in my head. It was because it was something I was driven to do. So anything that I do, it related to that is something that I self-actualized. Right, and then there's those who don't follow that. They don't follow that mandate. Okay, so I'll tell you like this: the person who typically thinks to do that type of stuff is usually thinking to do things that are going to have a greater and larger impact than those who don't. And see, and so your default mindset really cannot be concerned with the things that the people who are concerned with those things. You can't, because they don't think about the things you think about.
Yes. Okay. So they're like balls. Okay, little billiard balls on a landscape. These people need to be controlled and funneled to the right to certain.
There you go. You have to kind of do the thinking for them, right, on a certain level.
Yes, 100%, right, 100%. You already kind of had, again, people know themselves. Okay, you just kind of know who you are. If you've always been the type that is like, things are about me, I don't go with the crowd. What do you mean? In other words, you get what I'm saying. You guys in this panel understand what I'm saying. So now, how can the rest of the things be done? It all therefore comes down to the environment. These people will flow where the channels are, right? And that's why I started with this whole kind of Western civilization channels, whereby women will just flow to the place where, given the fact that these lower needs have been met, you cannot expect them to just rise, right? So generally speaking, then the other men now need to flow into the channels where you have created. Building these channels are not easy, but we can look at other societies. You've given the societies from the past, for example, GC, but also there are places right now, churches, right? Oh, no, not churches, more like mosques. And then also these, let's say, Sikh places of worship, like the Indian places, where people are playing these games, whereby they keep the women for the best men, okay? And it's not no kind of simpish stuff, where it's like, oh, well, I deserve a woman. It's like, no. That's not what it really is about. It is about making sure that the community does not completely crumble. And also for the men, there are rites of passage, and then there are levels to the rights. There are levels to where you get. You're like, this is basically from you now. You're a man, and then now you're this type of a man, whereby people have something to look up to. Men have something to look up to. These channels need to be built. It is not easy at all, and I don't think it's going to take just one generation.
Okay. Go ahead.
Go for that.
Yeah.
No. Right quick, because after Ike, I wanted to read that. I want to thank all these self-actualized people who are donating to me right now.
Sure.
And helping the cause. So Melody, I appreciate you. Love, you say intelligent men on the panel. Appreciate it, love. All right, and Eisen says, salute Game Changer and to the panel. Peace to the chat. Thanks a lot, Eisen. And let's see. I think DJ Nav has something. Give me a second. All right, DJ Nav, it says, loving the convo, Sapio Sunday, with the current panel should become a regular thing. Yeah, maybe that's a thing. I did this like on a whim, but maybe that could be a thing. All right, so Complex, we'll get you real quick, then we'll bring Melody in, and then we'll go to Brother Truth and MOT. So Complex, you had something?
Oh no, that was the Little Big Nate. He's got it.
Oh, okay, that was Little Big Nate. My bad. You had something on what Ike said?
Well, he brought up the Sikh community, and he brought up how, you know, their best and their brightest have women that are reserved and set aside for them. You know, we don't often enough speak to the brain drain in the Black community also. I mean, our best and brightest are mocked, they're insulted, they're made fun of, they're told that they're trying to be or act white. And before you know it, these young men and young women often leave our community. How are we supposed to ever evolve and progress forward as a race of people, constantly pushing out our best and brightest young men and women?
No, very good point. When I think of brain drain, I would say Ike would be an example of that. But you're right, it is happening, even though not on a geographic level. It is happening in our. When I say okay, let me be clear, so there's no confusion. When I say Ike would be an example of that, much like my friend, you know, my girl's brother-in-law, who came here from Cameroon because he couldn't find opportunity as a chemical engineer there. He came here and became a software developer. That would be a brain drain because they have one less engineer in Cameroon. You know, and Ike is obviously an intelligent brother who's, you know, who's here in the US. So, you know, that's and what you're saying is that men within the Black community, even though they're still in the US, are being enticed to move outside of the Black community.
30% of Black college-educated Black men now are dating and marrying out. That is brain drain.
So yeah, so their loyalties are either mixed or just gone completely. I get what you're saying. So yeah, that would be a domestic brain drain. So yeah, very good point. So Melody, what's saying, my love?
Loving the conversation, guys. I'm just gonna sit back and listen and learn something. You guys sound great.
Okay.
Hey Melody, what's up?
What's up? What's going on?
Not much. Congrats on that live stream.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay, guys.
Brother Truth, MOT is probably traveling, so he's in and out of service. Brother Truth, what's on your mind?
Hey, what's good, panel?
Brother Truth, what's up, bro?
What's poppin'?
What's going on, Truth?
Shit, man, ain't nothing, man. About to go see what this gym talking about. You know, get it in before the Super Bowl. Earn this beer, you know.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. On the topic though, man. One thing that Ike said on the last tail end is it having to be a generational change, right? Because honestly, I say the millennials are screwed. Straight up, there's no saving them. There has to be a generational shift, at least 10 to 20 years before there's any type of hope that can come from the so-called Black community. There has to be a value shift. It can't be, we can't continue to be, oh, this old smarty odd nigga here, just because someone says a word that has 3 syllables. You know what I mean? Like, we have to get rid of the ignorance in order for us to prevail.
Can I say something to that? Oh, when you finish?
Yeah, go ahead, man.
The only thing I wanted to say to that is one thing that we actually had postulated and espoused on the Brain Trust here is that so people like say like within my age group, because you said was that 20 years? What was that year range you said just now?
A generation, pretty much a generation. The time it takes, a child to grow from, from toddler, adolescence into adulthood.
Right. So what we did was we postulated here that if there was an elect of us who started with the children that are ages 10 and below right now, the ones that already exist. See, we already have a generation that we can do that with right now. So we start from pre-puberty below. We can maybe catch the kids, teenage, there's a lot of bright teenagers as well. But I would say if you reach 10 and below right now, and then you start from literally those kids back, and then any kids that will be created going forward. And if we adopt a new, what we consider to be a sort of a Black technocratic cultural paradigm, right, which involves intelligent engagement and procreation of intelligent children, I would say within that generational gap, we can achieve just that.
Yeah, the thing is transitioning from theory to practicality, right?
Well, I have a 10-year-old daughter, and I'm actually practicing it right now. So trust and believe.
And my daughter's 19. I showed a picture of her on Bernard Riley's platform. She's drop dead gorgeous, and at 19, she still has her virtue intact. So it is being done, Brother Truth. It's not being done on the scale that it needs to be. And we also, sometimes in this space, we have brothers who, all these Black women are trash, all these Black women are through. And I agree, most of them are. But do you know that my daughter's best friend is 19 also? She's married. Birds of a feather have a tendency to flock together. My daughter, when she was 16, I bought her first cell phone, right? And she's on Snapchat like most people her age. She would bring me her phone and she would say, "Daddy, look at this." And I would look at the phone and it would be 17 and 18-year-old Black girls saying things like, "Who's got the good dick for the summer?" And "You niggas can't handle this pussy." These are 16, 17-year-old Black girls saying this shit. And my daughter bringing it to my attention. There is such a stark contrast between little girls raised by their fathers and little girls raised by American popular culture, i.e. Black women. And it's the difference between night and day. I'm telling you.
Let me get two more. I appreciate you, David Monroe. It says Black collectivism, blocking self-actualization. Are you saying something's wrong with the collective? Is that what you mean?
No, he's basically saying that most Black people are afraid to go outside of the programming, the group. They're mostly concerned about their image as being a real nigger or, being a down ass bitch.
Yeah, and hence all of your talk of unity. All this talk of unity, this meaningless dribble of unity, which is nonsense.
Easy on the swears, but what Ike was saying earlier, or no, that was complex. I was saying earlier that the path can be selfish. However, the destination can be selfless. The path to self-actualization can be. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but that's what you were getting at, complex. And I think Ike was saying something like that too when he was saying,
yeah, no, you got it.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I'm paraphrasing, but that's what they were getting at. So I guess to respond to Brother Truth, it would be the equivalent to somebody who is doing whatever it takes to get to the point of wealth, much like Caesar did. I mean, I don't think that the conquered nations or conquered tribes thought he was a good guy. But he did what he needed to do to get to the path to, rebuild, Roman society to a more functional one. So that's one. Let me get one more. And this is from Anu 219. It says, "Great content. Keep up the good work." I appreciate you, brother. All right. So next we have Xanato.
Yeah, what's good, everyone?
Nothing much, bro.
Yeah, salute to all of you in the chat. As a matter of fact,
what's going on, Xanatos?
Hey, Complex, I see you. I see you, bro. Ike, Melody, Big Little Nate. Shout out to all of you as well. Yeah, when I hear Black brain drain, and particularly from Black cities, counties, states, even, I think it's something that really needs to be looked at and taken into consideration, because right now most of us on this panel have been not only sounding the horn, but have been prime examples of Black brain drain and what happens when you disregard your best. It's as simple as that. I don't get why is it that the ADOS community is the only community in the United States of America and one of the few communities in the world that disregard this existential threat, because it is an existential threat that is happening. And as far as what I see, I think what is it? Somebody stated, some a famous doctor, he stated there were multiple Black Americas that were occurring because of this. I basically simplified it, and my observation of what I like to call the three faiths of Black America, where in the future you're not going to have this forced, cohesive Black community that basically has been forced. Let's be honest, it has been forced. I don't care what pro-X say, oh, we got to stick together and all this other forced crap, and you got to come back. And look, that's code word for be the cleanup man, bail out Pookie, Shaniqua, and the Bebe's kids. And yeah, we all know what time it is when it comes to that. And it's usually never to help Black boys and girls, especially Black boys, who just need that one push just to get out, change their lives, and actually be an asset. It's always to help out the little baby kid POSs who are always in trouble just because they think it's cool. It's always to help them out. So I disregard those after school, whatever, help a little big brother crap out. But on the point of the brain drain, the three fates of Black America, what's going to happen is this. In the United States, you're going to have three kinds of quote unquote Black Americas. In reality, the first two, they're going to basically distance themselves from being called Black Americans or ADOS Americans in any way, form, or shape. Hell, it'll even get to the point where you will have these individuals lobbied to get new racial or ethnic or cultural identities. The first group being a unified set of foreign Blacks, meaning Africans, Caribbeans, and Black Latinos. So that's going to be your first group. Second group are going to be your biracials, mixed individuals, whether they come from Black men and non-Black women, or Black women and non-Black men. And you may have a rift in that between those groups because of just the ideology. But what they're going to unite in is not going to be is trying to get away from the third set, which is the ADOS permanent underclass. And that is exactly what's going to happen when, it's going to happen in the next, I'd say, give it about 2 or 3 decades when you really start seeing the SHTF happen within the community. And I mean, that's if the rest of dominant society, the mainstream society, doesn't vote in some Richard Spencer-like person who's going to trigger a Fourth Reich against all Blacks. Because this immature behavior, this foolishness, what it's going to do is going to piss enough people off, piss enough non-Blacks off to say, all right, we've had it, that's enough. It isn't the Mexicans who are taking our jobs who are the problem. It isn't the Muslims who are bringing Islam that's the problem. It isn't the LGBTs with their decoration and their homeless sign that's the problem. It's this group, and we're going to need to do something about it. And for all the people who are going to say, DJ Trump's racist, blah, 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 blah. First of all, he's going to be nowhere near this quote-unquote Fourth Reich president who's going to be elected. And two, the Negroes who bitch about DJ Trump, they're going to clamor to have him back. By that time, he'll be dead anyway. But the point I'm trying to make is this. You're going to have 3 Black Americas because of this brain drain. And the first 2 I mentioned, the immigrant class and the mixed class, especially if we have this Fourth Reich president come in, they are going to do their damnedest to basically separate themselves and be their own group. Because, quite frankly, the ADOS community has shot itself not only in the foot, but in the stomach and the shoulders, and now they're aiming for the chest, neck, and head, and they're trying to bring us all down with it. And quite frankly, I'm not going to be a part of it. I see Mr. Fantastic here. Shout out to him. I'll let you continue. I'll pass the mic.
Okay, so what you described did happen in history. I guess the Creole Jeune Couleur of Louisiana would be an example of such communities that's built separate from the existing quote unquote ADOS community, which is what they really mean, North American descendants of slaves. So yeah, I do understand that there is a possibility of something like that happening. Xanatos, before we pass the mic, what do you think do you think that these additional communities, the African immigrant community, combined with the Caribbean immigrant community, do you think that would create a separate brain drain for the existing Black community, meaning that a Black man would find more comfort getting with a Afro-Caribbean woman, or like myself, a West African woman, and I'm not saying anything's particularly special about my brain, though it is, but would you say that could create a separate brain drain, like for an enticement for people in our existing community to just leave and go to those?
Well, actually, so just to specify the first two groups, the African immigrant community will include the Caribbeans, Africans, and Afro-Latinos all into one. That they are going to think
it would, but let's for a second.
When it comes to seeing themselves as either that group or ADOS, oh, trust me, you're going to see some unification. Those
are not the only two options. They could see themselves as a. But this is your scenario, so we'll go for it.
I'm just going by my scenario. I know there's division between the groups. I get it, but I'm just saying when it comes to being seen, are they going to be seen as their group, or are they going to be seen as ADOS? I think there's going to be some quote unquote historical national beefs that will be torn down. Trust me, the Indians and South Asians, trust me, when they come to America, they drop whatever nation they're from, whether it's from Bengal or Gujarat or whatever. Trust me, they're Indians in this, or they're South Asians in this country. And I think that's what's going to happen between the Caribbeans, the Black Latinos, and the Africans. They're going to make their own cohesive alliance in America, as well as the other group being the biracial individuals, which, or you can just say more of an integrated mix group of Americans. And when those groups become solidified, I think, if anything, that's going to expeditiously cause the brain drain of all those individuals who have half a damn a sense, and they're just going to go to those groups. And as a result, I mean, what you're going to have is a fast path to a permanent underclass when it comes to the ADOS community, because they, for some reason, they don't want to do what it takes in order to correct the ship. Granted, what it will take, I honestly, part of that I don't want to say here, but there are some things that even on the surface that we've said before time and time again that they just simply do not want to do in order to improve.
The underclass is permanent and voluntary. These people volunteer to be losers. That's what they want to be. Nobody's making them. Nobody's corralling them into failure. This is what they choose to do. It is completely voluntary. These people opt to be failures in life. Most of them.
But the CIA dropped the drugs and the guns in the neighborhood. I mean, they practically put it in my hand. I couldn't resist.
Of course they did. We are perpetual and professional victims.
Yeah,
that's what we are.
Okay. I agree that there was some outside influence, but we should not have been so easily influenced by the outside. I definitely agree with that. So before I go into hood conservative, I just want to say, for the record, I agree with a lot of what you're saying. The reason why I gave you pushback, Xanatos, on the concept that the African community and the let's just say island communities, or the Afro-Latino communities, that these communities would unite. Basically, they would unite under the umbrella of "I am not with these Nagagas," because that's the only thing that they culturally have in common. Really, is that they are not African American, but they are African of African descent that live in America. So I can't see that happening, because Asians don't really unite under the banner of I am Asian. They come here with distinct tribes. I am Chinese. I am Japanese. I am Vietnamese. I am Laotian. You know, even though it's not apparent to us, they do maintain separate communities, and each of those communities are separate from Indian Asians and things like that. So I mean, I would see them being separate communities unless they want to be distinct from us so much that they unite on not being us, which would be ashamed, to say the least. Let me.
I must say though, this panel's power level is definitely over 9,000. We on some Ultra Instinct shit right now, like real talk. Mr. Fantastic, goddamn Xanatos with the clutch in the background.
Right.
Ike, yeah, this is very, very thorough.
But the thing is that you know as well as I, especially in
Can't
the Bay
forget
Area,
Little Big Nate too. Can't forget that nigga. That nigga brain the size of Kansas.
But Game Changer, you know as well as I do, being in the Bay Area for longer than I have, and look, Asians and to an extent the Indians here, they will use the secret password in order to fit into American society in a heartbeat, especially these Asians out in the Bay Area. And what's that secret password?
No, I mean,
I am not a nigga. I don't associate with niggas. I hate them. I'll give all my daughters to white men. And you think the Africans and Caribbeans and Black Latinos won't use that, even if it isn't outright hatred? It's just for them to not be associated with the ADOS underclass.
So you've been here long enough, Xanatos, to know that they're not one monolith community. And even amongst Africans, they do see each other. I mean, my girl, she makes herself distinct from, you know, no offense, Nigerians, you know, like, and vice versa, I'm sure. So it's not. I'm just saying that, you know, it's not really a unity of, you know, non-blackness. I mean, now everybody distinguished themselves from the Nagagas in their own camp. Like, and you know, rightly so, because, you know, I think we're the least likely to do that. But no, I'm just saying, and, you know, I don't want to make that a major topic of discussion. I just want to say that if they were to do that, they would be, you know, it would kind of be like that, you know, I'm going to start a club and I'm going to call it the Not Xanatos Club. And that would be very immature. That's all I'm saying. But let me read a couple of these super chats and then we'll go to Hood Server. Okay. Question. Why do you all tend to use that term of endearment that no one else can use, but you all, is that a underwritten rule? Yeah, it kind of is. It kind of is, even though I don't use the term in that way. I do use it as a pejorative for somebody who's on the lower end of the hierarchy of needs, because their main concern is sex and other vices. So yeah, I use it to describe such people of any race.
Do you ask Jewish people that question?
Yeah, I mean, however, yeah, it is, and deal with it, Snuggles, because here's the thing about that. Fantastic can tell you that Marines call each other jarhead, and that's their right to do that. And if they say, don't call me a jarhead, civilian, then don't call them a fucking jarhead, unless you want to get your ass kicked by a Marine. So yeah, it is any group's place to do such things. Fraternities do that. You know, if you're not one of us, then don't do that. You know, period. I had a friend who was chubby in high school and nicknamed Fat Cat, but he was on football team, but don't call him that unless you was his friend. That's just how that works.
Black culture is open source, bro.
Well, yeah, no, but I don't like having that discussion because it's not, you know. Now, even though I don't use the word,
no, I'm totally being facetious, bro. I'm not trying to.
No, I get what you're saying, but no,
the N-word.
Huh? Yeah, he's talking about the N-word.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah. But Snuggles, when you bring that up, come on, it really shows that it seems like, I don't know, that you're not black and you're looking for an excuse to use it, or it's just, I don't know. But do you really want to use it that bad? I don't want to use jarhead at all.
No, you don't want to.
I mean, Mr. Fantastic is in the Navy, and the proper term is seaman. Get it right. Okay,
Stop it, bro.
semen.
Stop it. I'm an airman, sir. I don't do boats. But no, it's not for she or he, I'm pretty sure it's a she at this point, man. But I don't know. You refuse to drop down the gender. It's obviously that Snuggles isn't black. She's not trying to use it. She's just really trying to get, if you guys notice, trying to get an understanding of black culture. This is why I tell people all the time, like, oh, it's nothing but black folks, nothing but black folks. So she's not asking, he or she is not asking in the mind of, they want to use it. There's really a genuine understanding of what and why black people operate how we operate. That's the importance of this space.
Okay, fair enough.
Well,
so
also
with that understanding, the answer is still sufficient. It is used in that way, similar to
they don't ask Jewish people that shit.
Yeah.
Well, come on. To be fair,
so this person's intention seems to be good, like Fantastic was saying. So let's not.
Like I said, it's also wholesale ignorant because as if we're somehow different from every other group of people on the fucking planet. Okay, well, I'm just saying, groups of people have things that they do with intra-group. That's just something to accept. Like, what's so fucking hard about that?
Well, it's not ignorant if they're willing to learn. I mean, so.
Well, no, okay, so now I just taught them.
Don't women routinely call other women bitches?
All right, we've given examples, yeah. So same person.
No, GC, there's just something about having to fucking explain your culture. Like, what the fuck? You're the one who's here.
All right, Snuggles again. Appreciate you. It says, Game Changer, I just realized you will have the president of the dark skin delegation and you have Ike. You bring in on the high hitters today. I see. All right. Thanks for pointing that out, Snuggles. Thanks a lot. All right. So next we had Hoodservative. It's on you, bro.
Yeah. Well, about the N-word, I just wanted to point out there's another element to it, especially mentioning Jews and any other ethnic group that has a slur attached to their ethnicity. I don't think they go around throwing the ethnicity out casually and then take offense when they hear it from other people. It's a weird little bit of hypocrisy with the black community in that. And maybe we have the right to be hypocritical about that. I won't even argue with that. But I'm just saying we can acknowledge that there is a weird element of hypocrisy. We love the word, but we hate to hear it from certain people.
Hey, Mr. Hoodservative, have you ever called a Jew a schmuck?
I don't know if I've ever used that word, but
okay, try it.
Again, if I'm just saying, there's an element of hypocrisy with it. So, and then frankly, there was a whole movie called
What I'm saying is there's terms, right, that people use culturally, intraculturally, and they're known externally, right? However, they will check your ass if you dare use it amongst them. Facts. Do you understand what I'm saying?
There was a movie called Dinner for Schmucks. There was one word about Jews as a K word that's off limits.
They really do hold the keys to the castle, man. You lose your fucking house, your job, and your motherfucking life. You fuck around with the J's, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, but that's my whole point, though. They don't use the word internally either. It's a slur across the board. So it's
no. There's words that they use internally, dude. No, there's words they use internally, and I'm telling you, I dare you to use it with them and see what happens. This is all I'm saying.
Fair enough. I'm not going to argue that you have the right to defend it. I'm just pointing out that, it is what it is, bro.
If it's good for the goose, it's good for the fucking gander, bro. That's all I'm saying.
Mr. Fantastic, man, what you got to say on the topic, bro?
Not even to get too deep into the whole N-word thing, because it's a sidebar. I wanted to bring it back to something else.
Did you have a main thing?
Yeah. I wanted to bring it back to something else. The whole idea of self-actualization, and this is something I kind of got into I was on Art Nussdale's panel a couple of days ago, and this idea of the Black collective and versus self-actualization. I think this concept of a collective is a direct impediment to the average Black male's idea of self-actualization, because you're automatically forcing yourself into something. You're forcing allegiance to something that in a lot of ways swears disallegiance to you.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So how would one cope with the need for here, I'll bring it back up, with the need for friendship, family, sexual intimacy without looking towards collective needs, or having a collective look towards your needs as well?
Well, you would have to figure out what makes you individually happy, what satisfies you individually, and then it goes back to the other element of just not giving a shit if they, don't like what you like, or they don't like you for what you like.
Okay.
And then, when we were talking about like the brain drain thing too, there's something else I brought up, and it's now a cultural like touchstone. But Carlton versus Fresh Prince, right? That whole thing. There was whole episodes about Carlton not really being welcome with, the brothers, so to speak. And this idea of it's not an intentional like self-imposed isolation from the Black community. Like, no, there is this pushing away of some of the best and brightest, maybe a lot of the best and brightest.
Absolutely. I've seen it so many times growing up. I've seen it happen with my son and a couple of his friends. Dude, we've lost hundreds of billions of dollars simply by showing our lack of respect for our best and our brightest. And it goes beyond just a lack of respect. They are targeted. They have no reason to have any sense of allegiance to us whatsoever. None. The way they're ostracized. A little Black girl can't even speak English in her class without being attacked. A little Black boy can't opt to read Harry Potter in the bleachers. If he's not playing basketball, he's a lame, he's a clown, he's attacked. This is horrible. And we get what we deserve.
But Lil Big Nate, this happens in other cultures as well. Maybe not as much, but it's still.
But not to the extreme where your ass would get you will get straight up, fucking beat the fuck down.
Reading
I've seen this shit firsthand, man. Like literally
not even close,
getting jumped because you so-called educated lame.
Right. Like, bro, if you're gonna talk about what other cultures are doing, you got to point out the cultures that you think are, or the cultures that you can prove statistically, through whatever records there are out competing you, and then ask yourself what they're doing different. What's more productive about that element of their culture? Like, that's the question to ask if you're going to be looking at cultures.
And how
exactly. So look at like a Japanese kid or a Chinese kid. They got so many goddamn activities where they don't even know when the next time they're gonna be able to sleep. Because they got piano practice, they got fucking volleyball, then they got motherfucking, Spanish practice, all kind of shit.
So we don't really have to look too far to find functioning cultures. We have the highest producing GDP. We have a representative of the highest producing GDP peoples here, and that's the Nigerian Americans. So, we can look to their culture as a template. The ones that I went to school with, they mentioned a lot of things that what I've concluded, you could correct me if I'm wrong, Ike, is that there not only is a respect for education from the students to the point where it's taboo to put books on the floor. There's also a push from society to give each student quality education. It's put at the forefront. Now, my sample population is from the students that actually made it to the U.S. on student visas, which means that they were exceptional in their own regard, and their family had some money to pay for it. But I did notice that culture amongst the engineers, the Nigerian American engineers here. So, perhaps
I would second that.
Yeah,
that is correct, and it is not just those whom are exceptional, or whom for whatever reason were able to make it over here. Mm-hmm. Your grandma who didn't go to school, right? And I don't know exactly how they instituted this, okay? Like, I don't know how this kind of thing came along, because that's another thing about culture is invisible. Like, you don't know. It's only in hindsight can you look back and be like, this is kind of different. And that's why it works. It works because it's just an expectation. There is no questioning. It's not like written down. It's like, it's just in you and it's all around you. So your grandma who did not even go to school knows that education and will tell you that education is key and it is paramount, okay? The jocks, okay, know they feel self-conscious if they're, to the degree to which they're not so smart, they feel self-conscious about that, right? And they will protect the nerds because they know who's going to be their boss in the future, right? That kind of a thing. The Igbos are well respected because, no one can out hustle them. That's a particular tribe in Nigeria. So yes, everything you're saying, Game Changer, is true.
Okay. L. Nixon, it says, yes, we have to resist the urge to become victims of circumstances, but we can't ignore the fact that rat utopia exists and predicts human behavior. Yeah, I think he means mouse utopia. And basically the conclusion of that experiment was that when certain species get comfortable, there's a decline in the civilization due to that comfort. So, but yeah, I appreciate you.
Well, it was deeper than that, though. It wasn't just the issue of comfort. Like, you could live in the jungle and have, free fruits and berries all day and be comfortable. It's more. It was more. You have to imagine that these rats were living in an artificial environment, and they were given everything that they needed to survive. And then once you remove the natural urge to seek what you need to survive, like it even screwed up their sexual reproduction cycles. Like that's a very, very telling experiment about our modern situation.
Exactly.
Problems drive solutions. Solutions drive innovations. Innovations drive evolution.
In short, what the two of you are saying is, shout out to Frederick Douglass. Without struggle, there's no progress, and that's what the
Thank you. There you go.
Proves. So after Frederick Douglass said it, that's what the Mouse Utopia experiment proved. Useless Familiar says, let's see. As a society, it seems like we got the first two Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Okay, true. It's just the belonging and self-esteem part that's a challenge. Some people, with 52% of men childless, we're having trouble with the family portion as well. But the women, however, are struggling with the self-esteem issue, and that's why they complain about light skin and this. So yeah.
Well, let me ask a question here. He says it's the belonging and self-esteem part that's the challenge, and then I'm gonna have to drop off because my phone's about to go dead. Here's the reality of it is this. So let's just say you go to set about your own institution, and what I mean by that is, let's just say a business, and you create this business, and then because you create this business, you become part of a trade group, and because a part of this, you become a part of this trade group, you get introduced to different circles of people. Okay, so you have to define belonging. What is your what is the tribe you belong to that's most beneficial to you? Okay, that's a self thing that you need to define for yourself. So, in my mind, it's not the greater Black culture for me writ large, because they're really not bent on progress. So that's a hindrance to me. So me and my belonging means professional peers, people that I can create business with, opportunities with, and guess what that inherently does? Allows me to then provide business opportunities and job opportunities for other people. And as far as the self-esteem goes, the ability for me to be able to do that, to build that type of thing, that type of thing gives me the self-esteem. That's the whole part. Everything about this is self. Everything that we're talking about is all self-actualized here. And so this is where I said, this is where you have to become selfish. It's about you. Okay, so no one else is going to do it for you unless you pay them, right? You hire them, and then they'll do things for you. Yeah.
Well,
right?
if I march and burn down enough businesses and stores and people's private property, maybe they'll do something for me.
That's not going to do absolutely nothing. You're not going to convince me to do anything for you that way.
I don't know. It got them $12 billion, man. Shit.
Wait, say that again.
Some shit down right now. If I can get $12 billion and corporate sponsorship, I burn down a.
Wait. Are you talking about BLM? Are you talking about BLM?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you read? And I touched on this. Let me hurry up and do this before my phone goes dead.
All right.
Did you read the BLM at school? 13 principles
yes, sir,
that was being taught. Okay, so guess what? your ass is not part of the equation. So you can consider all that shit if you'd like, or you can do your own thing. It's up to you. I got to bounce, you guys. Have a good one.
Complex, send me that, email me that 13, those 13 things.
All right, I'll hit you up.
Okay.
All right.
Mr. Fantastic. Appreciate your patience, bro. What's on your mind?
Ain't that much, man. Appreciate you, GC, having me on, man. I'm trying to figure out how y'all didn't dwell on this Nigerian prince we got in the building.
Yeah, he did say royalty, and then we just
y'all skipped all over that. This you can't accept. No, I was gonna tell Ike to email me, but now I can't.
I'm royalty too. What y'all talking about?
Because he go see y'all be hiding, man. Y'all be hiding out. That's what I'm saying. Y'all don't be telling nobody. Y'all slip it in there. Smooth, see you too, man. So you can't accept no emails
over here.
No emails from Smooth or Ike. They will steal all your money. Don't do it. All right. Seriously though, man. Shout out to everybody on the panel, man. This is like you said, man. This is a
yeah. Fantastic. You're undercover.
Hey man,
though.
Mr. Fantastic, I'm glad you stepped in, man. I asked me for a Western Union the other day, man. I'm glad.
Man. Be careful, man.
Yo, y'all don't know Fantastic is one too. Yep, Fantastic is one too. He just disguising this shit.
Be quiet, my brother.
Don't worry, I got you.
Don't keep it on the low, brother. But hey, man. Hey, great points, man. Listen, bro. This is gonna be forever the scapegoat and the excuse making machine as to for why women aren't doing the things. And GC, it's important, bro. Again, we have this conversation because at the end of the day, no society is gonna make it without the cooperation of their women. Okay, the only thing you're gonna be able to do is get it right with yours, or you're gonna have to leave them completely and totally alone or in mass to where they're the minority of women you're dealing with and start something new. So it's important that we highlight that why y'all talking about the women, why y'all talking about the women, why you talking about the women? Because again, no group of men in history have been able to be successful as a demographic or race or whatnot without their women in tow. This is why we had these conversations. And furthermore, at the very least, as the men, we have to overthrow the women to the point of where they're no longer heard. So we have to have a louder megaphone, and more articulate points and more impact than them in order for this to be had. So we have to talk about them to point out their flaws as to why they shouldn't be the representatives of us. Just furthermore, man, a lot of points was taken. I'm not gonna rehash everything. Great points was made, but Ike, you said something very important, man. And if you hit my email, but don't ask for no bank account information. I love to have a discussion. As far as we said something incredibly important that we don't have as the in the Black community, and that's this. Success is in the mentality. You guys are taught that from even generations of people that don't have the experience or the understanding of the importance of education or certain things or finances and all these things, but yet and still the culture is so embedded in understanding what it takes to be successful that you guys are, it's the children. And again, everything starts with the children. And when it goes to the point of the children are going to become the adults in our replacements, this is the importance and the problem with women controlling everything, especially women that see no importance of their own men or of the men of that same community. So if the Black women see daddy government and, daddy white man as the person of importance, as a person of authority and all these other things, and they purposely talk down on the Black men, well, the Black men are going to grow up to not have value in themselves. And the Black women are not going to grow up not have any value in the men they're supposed to procreate with to create more Black people. So yeah, man, there's just so many foundational issues and problems we have. And Xanatos brought up a great point too, man. That's something that we may need to start worrying about because we often we say it here, all these other people are not Black. And that is an understanding that we have, and they make it one thing, even though they may be on some individualism as far as like Caribbeans say they're not, they're Caribbean, African immigrants say that they're African, and so on and so forth. All these people of African descent that aren't necessarily ADOS. One thing they definitely do for sure is make the distinction because they know it's an advantage to them to not identify as Black American. They would do it amongst us, but when it comes to business, when it comes to finance, when it comes to politics, they're their own group, and they make that explicitly clear. You know what I'm saying? They don't want to be any type of confusion whatsoever that, they are somehow connected to us when it comes to important things. So I don't think what Xanatos is saying is too far-fetched. If you're smart and you have, you know, a percentage here, percentage there, because these other African people of African descent, Caribbeans, immigrants, and all these other things, they make up even smaller percentage of people than the Black community does. But what we come to see when you compare to like Asians or people from Israel is that if you have the economics and the political power and, you know, networks and whatnot, what have you, your numbers aren't as important as your actual power. So what he's saying is something that Black people should be worried about, because if the ADOS Black person does become the permanent underclass, then they have no reason whatsoever to associate with us, because then that's nothing but a negative. So the thing he's talking about is just something that I think he may be well ahead of, light years ahead of everybody else in believing, because as much as, especially when it's Black women led, to where, oh, you ain't Black, you ain't this, you ain't that, you know, as long as it's comes to their benefit, if these people were to make some type of you know, some type of delegation or some type of you know, I guess what I don't know. I don't think it'd be like a treaty or nothing, but, you know, just have an understanding of that. Hey, we're going to come together and we're going to represent the outskirts of people of African descent, but not necessarily Black people. That would be a major issue and problem.
So, would you say that part of the problem, Fantastic, is that the descendants of the I don't know, antebellum slavery here in the U.S. is that we expect others to learn from our culture, where we refuse to take anything from others? Because that's what it essentially boils down to. Like, if other cultures are merging without us, then that's because, you know, we aren't really willing to learn from them.
That is a prime.
Well, yeah, it's an unwillingness. It's an unwillingness to learn, and it's what do you have of value to give? You don't have, like you just said, Nigerians are the most successful people of African descent, like pretty much in the country, and like pound for pound or per capita, they're the most successful demographic overall, more than Asians, more than white men and everybody else. So if you have a very, very small percentage of people that are able to come here and have that type of impact educationally and financially, well, what do you have to give to them? They're able to establish themselves without your support at all.
Yeah, true. But I mean, what they have is due to, you know, their interactions with other cultures.
Every culture but Black people.
So my point is that no culture will survive without, you know, healthy interactions with others. We don't seem to have that. We seem to have, you know, on our end. It's not on anybody else's end.
Most definitely, and that's a major issue and problem.
So yeah,
what does another culture get from interacting with ADOS Black culture?
No, well, they get everything else from us. You know, well, okay, there's several things. For one, they get champions. They get music, they get other things, but it's not a cultural exchange. Like, it's just learning from someone else's culture, which is free. You don't have to give them crap to learn from their culture.
They get wealthy, is what they get.
That's a good point, DC, though. Like,
because that too, but what I'm saying is, I'm talking about intellectual exchange. You don't really need crap. You don't have to give them crap to learn anything about their culture. Now, I did the first time I learned something from somebody else's culture. I gave them a slice of my I gave them the whole thing, actually. The birthday cake from the lunch in school to learn how to make a paper crane. So, you know, I gave them something, and I still know how to make one.
You were going to give them a bean pie.
Was the cake culturally Black, though? I mean,
no. What I'm saying is, this is just an analogy. No, this is a free chocolate cake that they give to all the students every Wednesday. It was Cake Wednesday. I gave him one, and he told me how to make it. That's what I'm saying. I mean, but generally speaking, now I don't have to give them crap. I could just learn how to make a crane.
Yeah, but GC, I think
you see, brother, it was the yellow boned cake topped with the chocolate frosting of darkness, of melanin, that provided him the ability to exchange.
Judge, man.
Yeah, but hey, this is quick, GC. That's another big thing, though. You have to understand that there is a big gap and dearth in understanding of just society, man. All of society is quid pro quo. So the biggest part that you have to have in consideration, we're talking here, what do people get from the Black community that, like you said, they can't only access for free, but we don't have any ownership of, we don't establish any ownership of it, and we don't even benefit the most from wealth when it comes to all these things. Like when you mentioned music and athletes and things like that, the majority of those people aren't even doing what the other people do. Like when you get a big Nigerian or African star and all these other things, you know what they do? They go back to Africa. They build a fucking well system. They build a school. They do all these things and whatnot, what have you. When you get it here, again, it's just hyper individualism. And for the sake of you got to pay me in order for me to give back to you, but with your own people. So that's something that Black people do uniquely to everybody else, even white people. That's what I'm telling you, is just in Asians and everybody else, they understand. It's like, hey man, okay, I gotta, if as long as it's me over he, we as long as it's we over he and they, we're good. But that, for whatever reason, man, I don't know. And like that's where you get into a far deeper question. And a lot of research that needs to be done as to why we have that approach when it comes to each other.
Well, okay, so I get what you're saying, and natural ability aside, because that can't really be transferred rightly unless it's a Get Out movie situation. But outside of that, and also business connections aside, that is quid pro quo. I'm just talking about knowledge and information, that and cultural things that we can just take and say fuck you. Like you don't have to pay the Catholic community or the Latin community if you want to start giving your daughters quinceañeras. You don't. You can just do it. And I look at it and I say it's a good idea. And, I think that, my daughter should feel appreciated in her transition to womanhood. I think that this would help with her self-esteem in the future and her self-value and dealing with men in the future. So I'm going to do it. And what you going to do about it? I think that because they most certainly do it with our culture. And this isn't a slight at Latinos or Catholic people of any type. Brother Truth, please.
I'm saying one thing that I totally agree with you on, GC, is the fact that Black people do not like learn lessons from other humans.
That's what
I mean.
Yeah.
Like that is 110% true, bro. It really is everything. Not to say we shouldn't have an identity of our own that we resonate with and the history that we know. However, like anytime you trying to talk about like any other like historical events that happen, oh, that's white man's history.
Exactly.
You teaching that white man shit. You know what I mean? Like what?
Yeah,
you don't recognize we're humans and we all have the same experiences.
We
at some level.
We are too quick to dismiss things from other cultures that's beneficial, and the term that's white people shit don't really apply. Or I should say, first of all, the term white people shit don't apply to the bad stuff of white culture that we seem to embrace, but it also is something that's only used by us. Like Asian people don't say that's white people's shit. They just say, I'm gonna mute you because you got wind. I know you're outside, so
I'm gonna fall back, man. I gotta get it in, man.
Yeah, I know.
Hey, appreciate having me on, man.
Okay, yeah, appreciate it. Yes, so they don't say that. Like they embrace the working forms of other people's culture. Like if you look at MMA, it's an amalgamation of various different nations of martial arts, and they don't say that, oh, that's Brazilian people shit or that's Chinese people shit. They just do it, and they don't pay anybody for it either. They don't pay the ancient kung fu master on the top of a hill for it. They just do it, and we don't have that. We just dismiss a lot of very good aspects of other people's culture because we think that ours is better. I'm saying that arrogance is another thing that's holding us back.
And the way we move as a people in a collective sense, the way we act, the way we think, the horrible things we say out of our mouths, it all reflects who's in charge. A feminine, void of logic type train of thought is always being employed by us as a people, because who raises us, who is the primary influence over us, both male and female, whose feet do we try to walk in the place of? It's our mothers. And even us as Black men, and the effeminate way we get wrapped up in our emotions about shit, and we'll put feelings over facts. You're more satisfied with having Harriet Tubman on a $20 bill than $500 billion you can use for your entrepreneurial endeavors. Bruh, it's our preoccupation with symbolism over substance is why there's not much we have to offer anybody in the sense of what we can do for them culturally.
Once again, brother, I want to separate, like, what do we have to gain for free from learning other cultures and embracing aspects of it versus what we have to offer. You don't really need to offer something to learn something from a group of people when the information is freely available.
Well, if we consider all these people our enemies.
I don't, actually.
A lot of Black people do. They're our enemies. Instead of looking at the white man as your primary competitor, you look at him as your enemy. Not only do you look at him as an enemy, you look at him as the guy that's supposed to save you, too. I don't understand this contradiction that comes out of the mouths of these blackity blacks and stuff. The same man that you're, quote unquote, at war with is the same guy you're hoping will come to your rescue. I don't understand this.
Well, it doesn't have to make sense because they're stupid. So, like, in order to understand them, you would have to be stupid too. Like, I mean, Ike was saying earlier that he understands that there are a hierarchy of people and that they are the ones at the bottom. I mean, it doesn't mean that you have to hate them for being at the bottom, but recognize their stupidity and not, and you know, stop trying to put together a retarded Rubik's Cube.
Yeah, white people set up the system of jurisprudence, the economic system in this country. Do you really not expect them to be at the head of it? This talk of equality and how you can't make a society based off competition equal.
So let's I agree with that. Let's go back to Fantastic, because I know he has a rebuttal, or he has something to say from what I just said. So let me just read these super chats and then we'll go back to Fantastic. Willie Brown, thanks a lot. He says, peace, brothers. Appreciate you. The one says, salute, brothers. I believe our community would do well to learn the basic principles of credit and money. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, you know, gathering information from other tribes shouldn't be considered like white people stuff. You know, there are things that other tribes learn from us and have made quite a bit of money from it. All right, Fantastic. You had anything, or should I move to who's next? Smooth.
No, man, go ahead and go to Smooth, bro.
Okay, Smooth. What's on your mind, bro?
Yeah, I wanted to I actually had a question for you, GC, and also wanted to just generally say that at the end of the day, man, you know what I'm saying, like you know, it's great that we're having this type of discussion, because yeah, it really ties into my question to you, GC. So let me just go ahead and ask you, GC, given that you're in the relationship that you're in right now, would you really say that would you see yourself like getting married to your girlfriend in order to create a new community, or is that even in your mind to do? Would you see that as a solution to this problem? You know, like the problem that, you know, MOT would say, like, you know, just burn it down and all of that shit.
So to be perfectly honest with you, my relationship right now is tentative due to personal problems, primarily on her side. So, however, prior to that, I would say that, yeah. I don't consider that a collective solution. In fact, if done on a collective level, it would cause more problems than anything. But it would be a solution to my individual situation. Okay. And that is me being stuck in the middle of the hierarchy of needs, absent family. So it would be a solution to that.
Okay.
And also, learning from her culture, which I was able to embrace as she did ours. I found a lot of things about myself. So yeah.
I got you. Okay.
Okay. Cool.
Can I speak to that real quick?
Yeah. Then we'll go to the truth.
Okay. There's a lot of different opinions on marriage in this space. I think the overwhelming sentiment by most of the men I hear is that you shouldn't do it. I definitely understand where that sentiment comes from, but I honestly, I've listened to Ramil Amir. I've got nothing but respect for the young man. I've had this discussion with him on his platform about marriage. I understand the desire to do the surrogacy, to have your children and all, but you do realize half of those children will be women, more than likely, probably a little bit more than half. If you're teaching men that under no circumstances is any type of marriage acceptable, what happens to those 50% of female surrogate daughters that these men will eventually have? I don't think we're looking at the bigger picture. I understand not being. I personally am against. I've been through a divorce and a custody battle. I'm against state-sanctioned marriage, but I also know that marriage is the cornerstone of civilization. You can't have a healthy civilization without having healthy two-parent households to raise children in. My contention has always been that marriage should be for the children, not for the woman at all. It should be for a man to decide if he wants to have children. That is the best set of circumstances to bring them into existence with. So, interesting question, though. I appreciate you posing that.
Okay. So that was a bit of an aside, but I'll go down it a bit before we get into truth. So thanks for coming up. Fantastic. So marriage, it has always been prior to modern arrangement, a honor contract. And the thing about any honor contract, think of it like a person's credit prior to having credit scores and everything. It was really your honor and your reputation that determined your credit. If you was a person who reputedly did not pay back his debts, then others would not loan you money or trust you in that way. It was a honor agreement. If you borrow something from somebody to buy some seeds, to plant some crops, to give that person their money back, then that was a honorable agreement. If you did not fulfill your promise, then your reputation was affected in a negative way. Same with marriage. Marriage was an honor contract, meaning that, a person who initiated divorce would be considered dishonorable. And the punishment of that was that being dishonorable, and the reputation of that person and their tribe would come into question, and future marriages would be scrutinized and considered before doing anything. So brother in the back, I'm not letting you up. So that being the case, that's where we're at now as far as modern marriage. Unfortunately, the American woman's tribe has been compromised. Their reputation of honoring the marriage contract is compromised. And a natural response to that is, until they create a new and better reputation for themselves, to not do that particular type of business with them. Now, there are ways around it, like non-state sanctioned marriage, because common law is not a thing here in California. But, we can't ignore that the reputation has been compromised because previous generations didn't honor the agreement properly.
I agree completely. I agree with you 100%.
Well, I think there's more to it also, because it's not just the issue of honor. Like all the scenarios you laid out, that was basically like cultural ostracization, especially on an individual level. Like if you were like, you were a shameful woman, but it's not just that, they don't like you or you're now dishonored or some shit like that. Like that whole scarlet letter thing, you wore the scarlet letter, like there were physical, severe punishments. It wasn't just like people didn't talk to you at lunch or some shit like that. And so the idea that there has to be some kind of balancing of the actual punishments for people who transgress I don't know, the marriage boundaries or whatever you want to call it, because that's really where it is. It's not just that there's a bad reputation issue. It's a matter of a power imbalance. And until the power imbalance gets readdressed or gets redressed with, with different laws and changing, the family code or erasing it or whatever, that's the key right there. I don't see it changing until you actually attack the power issue, which that's a whole nother conversation in itself.
So what I mean by that is, no, I agree that the courts make it a thing. However, if both parties were to honor their agreement, then because the courts are really governing divorce, not marriage. So divorce shouldn't be an issue. An honorable woman would not take that into consideration. And yeah, one of the many punishments back in the day, including the Scarlet Letter time of a woman initiating divorce, even though she didn't do that, she committed adultery. But one of the many punishments, there were often physical punishments as well, and yeah, they were ostracized and things like that. But one of the standing punishments that's kind of universal is having a individual or tribal reputation affected. That is something that is inescapable, no matter how much the laws change. Even if they got rid of the FICA situation, if you are that guy that keeps borrowing money from your friends, there will come a point where your friends stop loaning you and maybe even your family money because you're just that dude. So that is where Black women have found themselves at right now. Their reputation to honor the sickness and health, and really all Western women, their inability in previous generations and their present to honor the sickness and health, death do us part portion of it, is in the question. And because we're questioning it, there's a delay and there's a reluctance from men to actually sign that contract with such a being. And it's unfortunate because, people are, more willing to marry someone like my girl who, even though she's the same race, she does come from a culture of, sustained marriages.
These women are miserable. I mean, 25% of American women are on psychotropics and antidepressants. And they haven't broken it down by race. I would imagine probably Black women are a little lower, but they more than anybody probably need these drugs more than anyone else. They have ruined themselves. There are going to be, Obsidian makes light of this, and he was the first to actually bring it up, the millions and millions and millions of Black women that are going to have to figure out how to handle their end of life decisions all on their own. There will be tens of millions of women just roaming the countryside looking for anyone or anything that will pay them the smallest modicum of attention.
well, here's the crazy part about that.
Bad, y'all.
So prior to recent history, collectively, Black women didn't know the consequence of dishonoring a contract like that. Now they do. Hopefully they'll learn and move forward. Hoodservative, if you don't mind, I want to get to, first of all, I want to get to these super chats, and then I want to get to Brother Truth. Okay?
Sure.
All right, appreciate you. All right, so Zero says, our culture is escapism. Learning from other cultures is a hard sell because other cultures require baseline cooperation, which takes work. True. Escapism negates work, trust, responsibility, authority, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. The underline of what you're saying is discipline, which is something that, it would take a first generational sacrifice in order to instill into the future ones. Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Zero. All right, and there's another one. I've seen it. Hold on. Okay, so right here, the Sneak 2008 says second generation African immigrants take on ADOS behavior, especially the females. I think that's true for most cultures here in the U.S. I have seen Latino cultures change significantly over 2 to 3 generations here in California. So hopefully they take the good and not the bad, but sometimes they don't. In fact, something really disturbing on an aside came to me when I was tutoring. So there was a group of Oriental girls who, for Halloween, wore pajamas to school. And because as a pejorative or a slight pejorative, people call Asian people, particularly Orientals, who are yellow on the outside but white in the inside, bananas. It would be the equivalent to calling us Oreos. So they were mocking that by saying we are bananas and here's our pajamas. So yeah, that is an example of willing assimilation that does happen after a certain number of generations. Absolutely. All right, Brother Truth, what's on your mind?
I came in because of the title, but I see you guys have moved kind of past that and onto a broader concept of like learning from other cultures and like the cultural norms of descendants of slaves.
Mm-hmm. But you can pick up where you like, because I know that we kind of drift and go places. So.
Oh, okay. So I missed the part. What did you guys end up concluding on? What was the point of the title? What are white women doing?
So we moved past that, but basically I was talking about Black women's mating culture, and what they're trying to do right now is emulate white women's mating culture, or at least emulate the results of it. But they are only seeing the results. They don't actually see the process from start to finish of how they are able to achieve this. So when they see a soccer mom or something like that, they say, "Oh, I want to be a soccer mom. Let me go out and find a soccer dad." But they don't necessarily realize that she met him when they both were working at In-N-Out Burger.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was my point on that.
Yeah, I can see that because I experienced it a lot, that basically in the Black community, it's like you're expected to be at you're supposed to already be successful before you start trying to mate with a chick. So they're always checking for who has the most instead of who has the most character. And what they end up finding out is that who has the most typically is such an ambitious and aggressive person that young that they don't even respect women already. And so being pumped and dumped by him isn't worth her time. She really should be focusing on someone who's actually got character and is developing his personality before he chases success, because he probably has values and shit. And as a consequence, women are attracted, in the Black community especially, are attracted to like the glittering generalities instead of the substance. Mm-hmm. And like you were saying, in other cultures, they run that talk though. I think they do have they give lip service to a lot of feminism. But if you actually watch how these chicks live, oh no, they're super patriarchal. They love male dominance and male leadership. They have a huge kink for it, really. And all that feminist talk is really like idealistic on at the worst case. I mean, I don't know how to phrase it best or worse, but in my experience, most white women, Indian women, Asian women, anyone, not Spanish women, mentioning Spanish women doesn't even make sense. Because Spanish women are super patriarchal, in my experience. I don't care how Western they get, they hold on to that poppy, mommy, patriarchy setup. They love that shit. They love listening and taking instruction, etc. But like as far as the Westernization of the dating norms, it's like even as the white women and the Asian women give lip service to the feminism, in my experience, it's all bluff. It's all bluff. And it kind of is bluff with Black women, but they believe the bluff. I think they really think the bluff is who they are as a person. They feel the need to not surrender. They would rather cut off their nose to spite their face. And it's like the other races don't seem to have that flaw. They're willing to compromise. They're not going to throw it all away just to prove they're strong and independent. They'll talk that shit to their friends and they'll talk that. But the truth is, they can actually very easily and swiftly be made to submit. So, yeah, I've definitely experienced it.
What I've noticed in other races is that, especially with white women, the less attractive a white woman is, the more likely she is to be a feminist. The more overweight a white woman is, the more likely she is to be a feminist. I mean, there's a direct correlation with her lack of access to decent men and the likelihood she's going to be a feminist. That's what
Well,
I
that's
believe.
that's a trope right now about feminists basically being the whole movement for ugly chicks to get ahead.
Unattractive women, yes.
True.
What it is.
In some cases, they do influence the attractive ones. I think what makes it different for ADOS women or for just Black American women in general is, like the title says, they want to know what white women are doing. Listen, because I know that there's ladies listening to me. The feminist white women are the only ones that would seek your company. Not saying that other white women hate you, they just don't think about you. And people think that white Americans think about Black Americans more often than they do, but really most
care about us. We're not thinking about
most go. Well, I mean, don't care would assume that they even think to care.
Exactly.
If something comes up, they determine then whether to care or not. But on a day-to-day, it's like they're not thinking about Black people.
Absolutely not.
Yeah. And however, if you have an agenda and you're out there and you're radicalized, and so you're out there every time there's a rally or a riot, you're there. Those people are into Black issues. So, and I'm saying that to say this: some Black women only know white feminists. The only white women they know are feminists. That being the case, the ones who are trying to seek white womanhood are going to become feminists because that's how they define it. They just assume that that's something that white women do because 100% of the white women they know are feminists. But 100% of white women aren't feminists. Just the ones that meet you.
Almost 100% of Black women are, because it starts in the home with their mother, this indoctrination.
But I mean,
that's exactly where I was going to come in on it too, Nate. Though that whole they're born into it.
It's the thing, because the mothers started somewhere as well. So what I'm saying is that if the mothers wanted to emulate white women, they picked the feminists because the feminists were the only ones talking to them. That's what I'm saying.
That's a fair point. I get you on that.
So they actually emulated the worst white women. Just like I say, we need to take from others' cultures. They actually took the worst aspect of their culture. And it's not even a reasonably common aspect, but they took that aspect of that culture, just to, because they thought that it would work. It would produce similar results as white women. But what it actually produced was it produced the same results as the white women who are feminists, meaning that Black women are now being treated as the ugliest white bitches of the white community.
The most revolutionary thing any Black woman modern times can do is to first qualify yourself for a decent, competent, productive Black man, know how to recognize them, choose one, and cleave yourself onto him. That's the most revolutionary thing you can do. And you have to do that before age 30. You just have to. I think by the time a woman is 35, if she's unmarried, there is I think 29% chance that she'll get married. You reduce your chances of ever getting married. If you make it to 35 unmarried, you will have a 29% chance of getting married. And every year after that, it continues to drop off precipitously. So your youth is your greatest asset. It's your greatest weapon. Do what you're going to do and do it early. The worst people you can follow the example of are the Black women. I'm sorry. It's just the truth, ladies. If you continue to follow these losers, and I appreciate, Cynthia G and the Pink Pill and all these folks. I like the fact that these women are congregating under these umbrellas so we can see where our enemies are. I appreciate it. Crystal Swirls. The more subscribers they have, the better, because we can all get an idea of how many Black women are out there that can actually be worked with.
Well, can I ask a question? Because
right quick. and I'll get into this on another video because we're about to do final thoughts, but Crystal Swirls and Cynthia G, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, they're following a pattern of behavior that comes from the 5-monkey experiment. And I'll explain that in future videos, but just to put that out there. So Dig Thug has a thing, and for whatever reason, has a super chat. And for whatever reason, I don't see it in StreamYard, but I see it here, which is kind of strange. Let's see. So Dig Thug says, do you think that schools teaching moral relativism, relativism cause many to discard honor?
Yes, that was kind of the purpose of moral relativism. Honor and morality are intertwined.
I don't know what moral relativism is. What is
it? It's kind of, I can't be the final word on it. I don't know it, verbatim, but it's a philosophy that kind of puts into question, Western concepts of morality. When the whole like Nietzsche, when Nietzsche, talks about God is dead, and what comes after that, like it gets into that whole field of thinking. So there's a lot of there's several famous philosophers who had a lot to say about this idea of what morality really is, and the will to power, that sort of thing. Might truly make right because you can do it.
There's no right or wrong. It all depends on your perspective. That's moral relativism.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's no right or wrong. It all depends on your perspective.
Okay. Yeah, it does seem like people are just trying to eliminate morality altogether.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah, by confusing the language of it. All right. So I appreciate you, Dig Thug, and Little Big Nate sent the Cash App. He said, "Thanks for having me on. Thanks for coming on, bro." All right. So let's do final thoughts in reverse order. Let's do it that way. So that would start with Truth. Final thoughts, Truth? Okay. Smooth. Final thoughts?
Yeah, GC, I just want to thank you for having me up, man. This was definitely such a great stream. Like, I didn't even know that this is what you had planned, man. And we definitely need to have more like this. I also wanted to say, man, I really want to thank you, brothers, for really being the thinking black men that you are, because I think these are the type of brothers that a lot of people that grew up in my generation didn't have. You know what I'm saying? They only had their mothers and shit. You know what I'm saying? So that's definitely a big bonus for those coming up, like Complex was saying, all those that are 10 and below, and also some of, I guess, Gen Zers and stuff like that. But yeah, man, definitely thanks for having me up, and I do look forward to more intelligent discussions like this. Thanks.
Okay, appreciate you, brother. All right, and Hood Conservative.
Yeah, thanks for having me up. It's been a while. It's a long time since I even been over here. It's cool to come back up here. This is a great conversation today. And I just wanted to end off with a question, because Fantastic alluded to it when he was talking earlier about men sort of have to dethrone women as far as, their voice and just that assumed leadership role of the community. And the question I would pose, because I kind of overturned, I pissed off a panel apparently by mentioning this. I was in a completely different environment, but I pissed off the panel by saying I think black men would probably get far more bang for their buck if they focused their energies on fighting feminism as opposed to racism. And so I wonder what people think about that question. So I would just leave it out there. Do you think, especially for black men in particular, it is far more beneficial to, think of ways to take down the feminist structure than to attack racism?
So, and I'll cover this in detail in future videos, but racism and feminism is one and the same, believe it or not.
Don't disagree. I don't even want to argue, but yeah, there's an argument to that.
Okay, and that's why I'll cover it in a later video. But and this is just like a prequel to that. Feminism thrives when men are in conflict, as it did with Rosie and the Riveter after World War II, and as it did with the third wave feminism after the Vietnam War. When men are out fighting others, that is when women grab power. Racism is instigated by feminists That's why at the Black Lives Rally, Black Lives Matter rallies, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, what do you see there? You see feminists. Like, rah, rah, get mad, kick up some dust, burn some buildings, loot some places. And that's true in every instance of racial turmoil. They are instigating the situation, beyond belief, because they do know that when men are at war, women gain power. Women grab power at that point. They're creating a conflict. So yeah, fighting feminism is fighting racism, because really it's just, bitch, shut the fuck up.
Maybe that's a better approach to it than I have.
Yeah. So, but yeah, thanks a lot for that. Little Big Nate, thanks again for the, oh, by the way, let me read this one before. Thanks for the large one. Thanks for the $100. I appreciate you. Thanks for the C-note. Thanks a lot. It says, the Sneak 2008 says, finally, someone got it. Unattractive women are fighting natural selection by voting for government handouts to ensure their survival. And unattractive and Black women want underdeveloped Black men. Well, underdeveloped Black men, if a Black man has reached the top of Maslow's hierarchy, then he will only select the most beautiful ones. Absolutely. So yeah, patriarchy does not work for every female. I said it before and I say it again. It does not work for women who are not into men. It does not work for the particularly attractive woman. Like, I mean, how does it work for a woman who was born to wealthy parents, but individually is just unappealing to men? It doesn't really. Like, think about that. Like, you can actually take a step down in quality of life just because of that. So it's not as beneficial for everybody, and those women will fight for it. Now, an attractive woman should, and I encourage attractive women to say, attractive feminine women to say, that's an ugly bitch problem, not my concern. When they pass out flyers, say, hey, that's an ugly bitch problem. That's not my concern. Like, that's, hey, don't come to me with that. Like, do you realize that, an overweight woman can't find a man to support her? Do you realize that I'm skinny and I don't give a fuck? Is what you should say, ladies, when they're coming with that. Don't make their problems yours. My bad. So thanks again, once again, for the large one, the Sneak. Appreciate you. All right, go ahead, Little Big Nate.
Yeah, man, appreciate you letting me up, man. Great conversation. To the Black women that are listening, yeah, I've been telling my daughter this since she was about 9 or 10 years old. Every woman needs the guidance of a man that loves her. Without that, you are doomed. You are going to fall for every trick, every trap that they've set out there for you to end up overweight, miserable, and alone in your 40s. You absolutely have to have the guidance of a man that loves you. And you should seek that out as early as possible. You are in a race against time. You are in a constant battle with Father Time. I know you think those good times will last forever in your 20s. They don't. They are gone in the snap of a finger. Your only hope is to listen to competent, productive, family-oriented Black men. We're the only ones that are going to tell you the truth. And if you choose not to, hell awaits. Thank you.
All right. Appreciate you a lot. Yeah, that is really the only way out. Don't let these chicks lead you. Ladies, there's 520. That's how many Saturday nights you have in your 20s. Like, when you do the math and you calculate it, it's not that many. Now you can waste it, on, bouncer blowjobs or whatever, but you only got 520. And if you're in your 20s, like halfway there, you're halfway through that. You're like at 200 or something. So, 275 or 76. So, don't waste it on triviality. Like it's gonna go by faster than you think. So very good point, little big Nate. And Ike, appreciate you, bro. Same mind. Closing thoughts. Ike, you there?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, good. Yeah, so just real quick, want to reiterate the point that I came in with, and then just in closing thoughts fashion, just kind of highlight 4 points without really getting into it. Basically, the first thing that I came in with is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, trying to lay out the landscape of the Western civilized society, meaning that the lower rungs of the needs being provision and protection, food, right? Air, water, and then above that, some security has already been met for the average woman, for all women in Western society. Therefore, they do not need to cleave on to a man to get that. Hence, there is the reversion to just base kind of emotions or desires, which is pookie, or that kind of thing. Or now they want self-esteem or emotion bonding and so on from you, and that is ephemeral, it is fleeting, it does not last. Hence, that's the problem. But people want them to rise up to the level of honor, pure stoicism, pure building, and it is not likely to happen in mass, right? A critical mass, and we're looking at things on that level. Then there's just some 4 points I wanted to make, and that is that the establishment of sage-like values on top, let's say the Brahmins in India, or what we described in Nigeria, whereby the book is sacred, that kind of a thing. These things involve certain kinds of magic tricks. You know what I mean? In other words, these are mythological things. These are not things that you establish through rationality, because the masses will not be rationalized with, right? Sure. You need to give them rituals and myths and stories and tales and tell them, in other words, there is no rationality in saying don't put the book on the floor. You get what I'm saying, right? These are actually magic tricks. So it just kind of laid the landscape of what the task is, right? Not that it's an easy task, but we need to be clear about what exactly we're trying to do here, okay? And then number 2, there is the whole thing of self-esteem, which is bullshit. The prisons are filled with people with a lot of self-esteem. Self-esteem is not the problem. What is needed is discipline over self-esteem. This idea that the kids need more self-esteem and that's how they're gonna, it's like no, the kids need discipline. Okay, then there is the idea of universal standards, rather than saying that's the white man's way of doing things. This is the it's like, no, there are universal standards of competency and universal standards of pragmatism, things that work. Okay, you mentioned earlier, GC, that either use the MMA example. This is what works. I don't care if it's from Brazil or from China or from Japan. This is what works. And generally speaking, when you have a functional culture, you understand that there is the earth, there is the universe, we are human beings. Therefore, a lot of the things that you may have a provincial mindset about, like, this is just my little corner of the street and the problems we have, you understand that these are universal patterns and they're universal standards of competency, and therefore speaking correctly, putting on a suit, for example, or carrying yourself a certain way, it's not a white man thing, it's just a thing that works. And then number 4, which is basically saying, responsibility, okay, over rights. Right, and that is one thing that all these cultures coming from the outside, they don't come here agitating for rights. You may find, right? You don't see the immigrants marching, trying to be like, well, my rights, my feelings, my self-esteem, all that kind of stuff. They're like, what? I'm over here to tear it up. I'm the fox in the hen house. I'm busy taking it all while you guys are talking about your feelings, in other words. So basically, we got to understand the landscape and the immensity of the task, but it does not mean that it cannot be done.
I agree. On the books things, though, that seemed to have been enforced externally and then ingrained into the students. So it did seem like at one point, and I'm speculating, that the teacher would say, pick that book up. Don't you ever put a book on the floor like that again. Perhaps teachers has some authority to inflict corporal punishment. And, and then it got to the point where those students told their students, and, it went on and so forth like that.
But it's such, that is I just wanted to use your example.
Right.
However, you understand that the bigger picture. Take, for example, the J people, as Bro Truth called them, right?
Right.
There's been such a reverence for the word, right? The word has been, quote unquote, worshipped in a certain way. That is one kind of way of looking at it. But the Brahmins, for example, in India are on top of the hierarchy because, that's the caste of sages, priests, and so on. Even in the West in the past, right? The monks were on top. They created the sciences and the musical notations and certain other kinds of things. Same thing with in ancient Egypt. In other words, you got to have this magical system of mythology that says who is on top, right? And if you have it that there are these people, the word, the book, the sage, the priest, whatever it may be, is on top, it'll just then flow, it'll permeate through the rest of society. However, it is not done through rationalization is the point that needs to be, and this is esoteric stuff we're talking about, but you understand what I'm saying.
Yes.
That there are people who know, okay, well, this is bullshit, as Plato calls it, the noble lie. But you're going to need the noble lie in order to form any kind of cohesive group of people.
Wow, that's deep. Yeah, and by any means necessary, whatever works. Yeah, I agree to that. All right, so Zero says, can't get away with that one. Immigrants don't have to fight for anything. It was already win before they got here. Huh? There's a lot of
I see exactly what he's saying. That's why I said they're coming from a place where, okay, so if you're coming from the jungle, okay, where nature is still harsh, red in tooth and claw, and you see quite starkly the inequalities and so on and so forth. You're coming from Calcutta, you're coming from Lagos, Nigeria, and you're trying to hustle out there. When you come over here, where there has already been an emphasis on freedom and equality, pushing back of nature to create space for human agency, what you find is in other words, you do not have any complaints. However, what I'm telling the people who are here is that, hey, look at the mindset of this immigrant and notice what he's doing, taking advantage. He is the fox in the hen house. Why don't I be more like him? Granted, I don't want to go where he's from because that's too nature, that's too jungle, right? But he sees something. What does he see? It's not a question of, well, who did you fight for? Did you not fight? It's like, no, he came here for a reason because obviously where he's coming from is too much of the jungle, right? But you need to adopt, to the degree to which it's possible, his jungle mentality. That's all I'm saying.
No, I get it. I get it. So like a hawk that lands on the island and it's nothing but parrots and what are those, peacocks and stuff like that will find himself at an advantage on gathering food and resources. I definitely understand that. They had a different struggle. I mean, like, to get here is a struggle. And I'm talking about like someone who's closer to my friend than yourself, who at 6th grade, his parents had to invest for him to continue his education and not work the fields. So they took a risk on him and stuff like that. So it's like, I hear these struggles and I see what Zeros is saying. Once they get here, they are prepared because they went through that struggle. I get that part. But yeah, let's see. They piggyback off existing wins. Okay, yeah. So, and that's the wins I was talking about. Okay, makes sense. Yeah, that's not a valid point. All right.
Yeah, no pushback on the piggybacking, but the existing wins are there. In other words, they're not. It's not an illusion that they're taking advantage of. It actually is there.
True. But yeah, and that goes back to Frederick Douglass. Shout out to him. Exceptional person who definitely had to struggle with his own freedom and just a system. He actually had to repurchase his freedom once freed just to come back to this country. So, salute to him. Without struggle, there's no progress. And he went through a greater struggle than most people I know of. To become a vice presidential candidate during slavery is a huge accomplishment. So salute to him. But yeah, without struggle, there's no progress, and welfare does take the struggle away. Let's see. Oh, there we go. So Zero, once again, appreciate you. Thanks a lot. Says, this is why I despise welfare so much. It solves two problems. It forces us to become, let's see, disciplined and competitive. And let's see, and immigrant self-deport because no more free advantages. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, no matter what, we're getting people who are looking for opportunities and willing to work for them. Whether they come here on H-1B, meaning that they had the qualifications to get here initially, student visas, which is really a case of people being handpicked by the U.S. Even though there's a lottery system, I doubt that it's balanced. And yeah, so they make their way here. They make their way here, and they don't want to live off of a system. They actually have something to contribute to it, whether it's physical labor or intellectual labor. So yeah, anything on the super chats before I close out?
No, I just wanted to completely agree that people coming over here for opportunities, by definition, are coming from a place where there's all kinds of problems, which I could talk about, right? Or which anybody could point to. But that's not the point. The point is they actually come into a chessboard and are doing things within that real space. And to say, oh, well, you didn't fight to create this chessboard, it's like, that's just kind of like, why don't you just do what they're doing to the degree to which is possible? And I understand that it's a different mindset. You're not going to have a jungle mindset if you were never raised there. But you can kind of see, someone who comes for opportunity, what does he do? Obviously, there's something to learn from him about taking advantage of opportunities, because that's kind of what he is here for, right? Mm-hmm. So 100% no, kind of like, because it doesn't really matter. That whole thing about going back and forth about, they're over here to take advantage of, it's like, well, 100%. And, oh, yeah, why don't you guys make Africa better? Okay, 100%. Meanwhile, though, what can you learn from how to take advantage of opportunities that they're taking advantage of?
Good point. Good point. Truth, do you have anything? You've been muted the whole time. You're probably gone. All right, so he's gone. All right, I'd like to thank the Cash Apps and Super Chats. You guys were particularly generous today. I appreciate you, bro. Appreciate you all. I'd like to thank the Cash Apps and Super Chats. I'd like to thank the managers and moderators. I'd like to thank those who are listening silently and those who are participating in the chat. Make sure you hit that like button on your way out. If you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. We have a lot of good stuff. And movie nights are Thursday. The movie this week is going to be Baby Boy. So make sure you check that out. Outside of that, this is GameChanger00100. Game over. Peace.